Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame la cafetière.
Monsieur le Sénateur Routier,
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Ozef, Monsieur le Sénateur McLean, Monsieur le Sénateur Gorse,
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Farnham,
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Balash, Monsieur le Sénateur Green, Madame le Sénateur Ferguson, Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Hélier, Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Clément,
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Pierre,
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent,
Présente.
Madame le Connétable de Sainte-Marie,
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Ouen,
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelade, Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Martin,
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur, Monsieur le Connétable de Grouville, Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Jean,
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de la Trinité, Madame le Député Martin,
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Southern, Madame le Député de Grouville,
Présente.
Madame le Député Hilton, Monsieur le Député Lefondre, Madame le Député de la Trinité,
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Louis de Saint-Sauveur,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Tadier, Monsieur le Député Noel,
Présent.
Madame le Député de Saint-Jean,
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Higgins,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Masson, Madame le Député Pinel,
Présente.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Martin,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Bryans,
Présent.
Madame le Député de Saint-Pierre,
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Rondel,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Mézec, Monsieur le Député Louis de Saint-Hélier,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Ouen,
Présent.
Madame le Député Dublé, Monsieur le Député Labbé, Monsieur le Député Wickenden, Monsieur le Député Bray,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Norton, Monsieur le Député MacDonald,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Sainte-Marie,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Truscott,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député McClinton.
Madame la cafetière.
Prions Dieu. Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait le ciel et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et les puissants de la terre, pour le règlement et pour le conduit du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton Saint-Nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir le cœur et les affections de tout ce qui la compose, et de le conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toutes les délibérations aient accompagnées de ta bénédiction, réussissent au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qui te plut de commettre le soin. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé, Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonnons nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car toi, la reine, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen. Monsieur le Sénateur Ozef,
Defel.
Monsieur le Sénateur McLean,
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Balash,
Defel.
Monsieur le Sénateur Green,
Présent.
Madame le Sénateur Ferguson,
Defel.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Hélier, Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelade,
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur,
Defel.
Monsieur le Connétable de Grouville,
Sir, could I ask that the Connétable be defo excuse because he's in the UK with his wife, who is ill?
Excusez. Excusez.
Monsieur le Connétable de la Trinité,
Defel.
Monsieur le Député Southern, Madame le Député Hilton,
Sir, could I ask that Deputy Hilton be marked defo excuse for same reasons as Tuesday and Wednesday?
Excusez.
Monsieur le Deputy Lefondre.
Sir, could I ask similarly for Deputy Lefondre, please?
Excusez.
Monsieur le Deputy Tadier. Monsieur le Deputy Masson.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Mezek. Madame le Deputy Doublé.
Sir, may I ask that Deputy Doublé be marked défaut excusé for family reasons?
Excusez.
Monsieur le Deputy Labbe.
Teffel.
Monsieur le Deputy Wickenden. Vous jurez que Monsieur le Deputy Wickenden est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé.
Malade.
Monsieur le Deputy Norton.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy McClinton.
Les états sont constitués. So we are resuming the debate on the Connetable St John's Amendment to the proposition on the future hospital preferred site, P110. And I call on Deputy Noel to speak.
Thank you, sir. So this debate is not about left versus right, or the Council of Ministers versus backbenchers or scrutiny. It is about the most important public building that the 49 elected members of this current Assembly will ever debate and ultimately make happen for the benefit of all islanders and for generations to come. Sir, I cannot think of another project where some 50 alternative sites have been looked at. That is the number we have considered for the future hospital over the past 5 years or so, and we have been right to do so. We have been following a process of robust, independently advised assessment, review, States members' workshops and consultation, and in doing so, we have finally arrived at a preferred site to consider. Of course, the Constable St John is well within his right to bring forward this amendment, but it is somewhat disappointing that he has done so. It is particularly disappointing as this comes at a time when it would seem that the groundswell of public opinion is saying, just get on with it, and I sympathise with their frustration. It is also only fair and proper that a project of this magnitude should be reviewed by scrutiny, and if an amendment was to come, one would have expected it to come from scrutiny. The fact that they have not put forward any amendment, I think, is very telling, and I sincerely thank the Chairman for his comprehensive and balanced speech yesterday and for his professionalism in these challenging times. Sir, where would reviewing a waterfront option yet again get us? Well, firstly, it would get us delays. The Constable believes that the delay would only be no more than 6 or 7 months. That may not sound much to the Constable, but it is a significant amount of time for future patients, clinicians and staff. Any delay will almost inevitably lead to increased costs in terms of inflation, along with many others, which we can ill afford at this time when we are trying to make savings. And what about the businesses and residents that may be affected through the purchase of the preferred site? How easy is it for them to put their lives on hold, unsure about their future? 6 more months will be a long time to them, and they need and deserve more certainty today, not in 6 or 7 months' time. We need a new hospital as soon as possible. We've all heard the reasons why this is so important. Can we make do with what we've got for the next 6 months? Probably. Maybe just if we're lucky, but at what risk? Is delaying what we should be doing now if we don't need to? Absolutely not, sir. There would be increased costs. The Health Minister has already advised, as he said yesterday, that the additional cost would range from some 10 to 17 million pounds. The chairman of the scrutiny sub-panel quite rightly stated yesterday that there would be difficulties in retaining clinicians and staff if we accept this amendment, resulting in even in greater non-financial costs, real people costs. Sir, we are in danger of being perceived as being unable to make decisions by the public, clinicians, staff and potential contractors. I agree that this is a huge decision and we cannot take it lightly, but we are not doing so. We are being considered in our approach. However, there comes a point when we just have to make the decision, and I think we have definitely reached that point. It just isn't credible as politicians in question. It goes much wider than that. And I'm talking about the suppliers and the contractors. We need these people to want to do business with us. We need them to want to compete and tender for our business, to keep their prices keen. We don't want them to build in risk factors into their prices, or worse still, pull out the bidding process altogether. Tendering for business is costly for them, and they will pick and choose what they bid for. If we look too uncertain or too risky, they may simply not tender. I think the first paragraph of the Constable's report for this proposition is very telling, and as all good first paragraphs of report should do, summarise the reason for his amendment. What leaps out to me are the words, and I quote, "precautionary measure to enable members to have a full and proper debate on the hospital." I'm not quite sure what he thought would happen without this amendment. Did he think it would just go through on a nod? There's been a huge amount of political engagement on this, and of course that will continue. I think we have done our best to help with the understanding around this project, and again, this will continue. I think that a huge amount of work has been done by our highly competent joint Department for Infrastructure and Health and Social Services team to get us where we are today, and this will also continue. We've not been working in silos. And I join Senator Green in thanking the Future Hospital team for their outstanding, exemplar efforts to date. And again, they will continue. But fundamentally, I think that members have been provided with enough information to make a clear decision today. And let us not forget that more detail will come next summer when this Assembly gets to debate and hopefully endorse a fully worked up scheme. Sir, I never thought the preferred site choice would go through on a nod. I've always envisaged a full and proper debate, both now and when the detailed proposals are brought back to this Assembly. The Constable wrote in his first paragraph of his amendment, and I quote, "if necessary, give members a choice when arriving at their decision." Surely the proposition itself deals with the "if necessary." Members have the opportunity to endorse or reject the proposition. Only if they reject the proposition does the "if necessary" come into play. This amendment is proposing a costly, so-called precautionary measure that apparently may or may not be necessary. I certainly cannot support such a blatant waste of time and money. I urge members not to fall into the trap of agreeing to this amendment because they can't see that there would be any harm in doing so. Sir, no one has worked out the exact cost arising from the adoption of this amendment, this D- site. However, the Constable has suggested that there would be £38 million worth of savings from this D- site if it was to be adopted. Where is his evidence? What is the basis of making such a claim? Where is his independent verification? We have ours in the form of Ernst & Young, Gleeds, and now the scrutiny panel's own advisors, Concerto. The Constable claims that the cost of replacing Jardin de la Mer would be saved. That would be true, but as the replacement was to be on the current site, it would not be a big saving. Option D, not D-, allowed for 140 car parking spaces, not the 560 that are actually needed, and that comes with a capital cost of some £20 million. Add to this the requirement for a temporary car parking to be replaced, the current temporary car park on the waterfront. It would have to be in the same area, and the only area available is the Elizabeth Terminal. We would have to build a deck above the Elizabeth Terminal, costing another £6 million. But that's option D. D- doesn't even have the space for the 140 spaces, let alone for the 560. But can I bring you back to the opening paragraph and the words that the constable used. Do they fill you with confidence? The confidence you need to embark on a course that would lead to significant expenditure, additional expenditure, and delay? Sir, the current site is the site to run with. Let me finish with the 4 reasons, in addition to those already given, as why we don't need to consider D- as an alternative site. Number 1, at some point in the future, the hospital is likely to need to expand. Health provision will change. This can easily be done on the current hospital campus site. We can extend into what would have been the old hospital. There would be no room for such an easy expansion on the waterfront. Point 2, the current General Hospital has the significant great resource of the Patriotic Street car park being adjacent to it. Extra car parking on the waterfront will be difficult. Point 3, the build from a D- waterfront site may be quicker, in theory, from when you get the first shovel into the ground. But I agree with the chairman of the panel and others that there is currently not alignment on the use of the site. The master plan is under review for one, so there would be significant time needed in the lead up to actually starting to build. That on paper difference, sir, between option D, and I say option D because we have no idea how long option D- would take, that work hasn't been done, and option F would be easily eroded. So the 6 years and 8 months for option D versus the 8 years for the preferred site, that difference will erode quite quickly, sir. And finally, sir, point 4, the preferred site works because of the link to Patriotic Street multi-storey car park, creating, in effect, multiple ground floor areas. If members look at the A3 sheet I distributed yesterday morning, they will see that the Constable's D- site cannot accommodate a similar, like-for-like, increased height solution. The increased height solution is why we've been able to come up with site F, the flexibility, the special case for a hospital, why we've been able to go higher than normal planning would allow. So that special consideration still wouldn't fit on the D- site. And the reason for that, it cannot be, the D- site cannot provide the required effective ground floor area. And this was the reason. The D- site actually was considered, sir, in the winter of 2012-2013. We actually looked at a larger number of different configurations of possible sites on the waterfront within the MOG subgroup. And it was because it didn't comply, and we couldn't get it to comply with the 20,000 square foot of effective ground floor space. 20,000 square meters of the effective ground floor space, that it got rejected. So the Constable site is simply too small. It's 20% smaller than the minimum required. And it does not have any mitigation of a 13-storey car park butting up to it. So, sir, members will see that some of the coloured blocks can be accommodated on the site, but not all of them, not in total, far from it. Any D or D- site would require significant enabling works, which would include relocation of the current car parking, some 525 spaces to be provided elsewhere in the immediate area. And as I already mentioned, the only area possible for that is to build a deck above the Elizabeth Terminal car park area, sir, at a cost of an additional £6 million. It would require a major drainage works under the site. It would require decontamination of the site. It would require major flood prevention works. As flooding the basement of an apartment block in a storm is one thing, doing the same for a hospital building is in a completely different league. And that 6-lane road, sir, be it above or below ground, will still need crossing. Sir, in the Constable's resignation speech from the sub-panel some 2 weeks ago, he cited his only reason for doing so, and I quote from Hansard, "The proposition was lodged late, and the very short period in which the scrutiny panel had to examine in detail such an enormous and vast project has meant that the panel has been unable to produce their report in ample time. Well, so he was not quite correct. The panel had the draft report and proposition before the scheduled lodging date, and due to a technical reason outside of the Minister's control, it was lodged a single day late. Indeed, in fact, the scrutiny panel themselves did end up producing their report and publishing it in ample time, and we are grateful for them for doing so. Sir, I hope, like me, members do not want to prevaricate. They want to get on with the project. They see the benefits. They listen to what the majority of the public is saying, and they vote against this amendment, and then after debate, ultimately endorse the preferred site. Thank you, sir.
Sir, can I ask a point of clarification?
Point of clarification, Deputy Higgins.
Yes. The Minister said that, as part of his speech, about flooding risks. Can he tell us whether any of the apartment blocks on that site, or the Radisson Hotel, or any of those businesses have experienced flooding in the way that he suggests the hospital might be subject to flooding?
Sir, I'm not aware of any flooding in recent times, but we are facing climate change, and we do know that we, over the life of this hospital, which is some 60, 70 plus years, we will have to do something about our sea defences in that area, sir. So this is a long-term asset for the island, not a short-term gain, sir.
Constable St Helier.
Thank you, sir. So I'm, as members will know, fully appreciative of the importance of private members' propositions and the ability of any member to bring a matter to the Assembly for debate. This particular one, however, does illustrate the democratic deficit that exists in our island because of the way our Parliament is structured. I can't help but observe that the mover of this proposition represents, I don't know, 20% of the number of constituents of electors that I represent. And therefore, when it comes to voting time, when we press our buttons, the residents, the electors of St John, will have approximately 4 or 5 times the political influence, the power over this decision than the residents of St Helier, in which the hospital is to be situated. And I find there's something rather strange about that. But that's only an observation, because I don't believe that this Assembly will approve this amendment. I can't see why it would, when both Scrutiny and the Council of Ministers agree that it's a bad idea. And I don't really know why we're making heavy weather of it, given that both sides of government, if you like, are agreed that it should not proceed. I'm not going to repeat all the good reasons that have explained, but been explained both by Scrutiny and by the ministers, just now by the Minister of DFI. I am going to refer to a couple of points made by the proposer in his speech, which I believe need challenging. He said a couple of times that this waterfront light option, or D-, is the popular option. And I would challenge him to show the evidence of that. I understand there was a JEP online poll. These polls, of course, are available to everybody who's got an iPhone or a laptop, not just in Jersey, but across the world. Indeed, a recent online poll about whether to extend the town park had me quite mystified, because about the same number of people voted not to extend a park in the centre of St Helier as voted, presumably, for town cramming. But of course, we don't know who those 46 people were who supported town cramming above an extended park, any more than we know that the people who voted in this particular poll support a waterfront option, and if so, what option they support. It is, as other members have said, waterfront light. It doesn't provide the space for the hospital, either the present hospital or a future hospital, to grow that the original waterfront option provided. And indeed, the Constable of St John did, in passing, ask me for my views. I was engaged in something else at the computer. He was engaged in writing his proposition. He just asked me what I thought, and I said, well, hands off the Jardin de la Mer, because I will fight for every square inch of open space that currently exists in St Helier, and I will not see it compromised. and I think take my hat off to him, he's pulled back the boundary of the new hospital to allow Jardin de la Mer to continue. But I have to wonder in what state this particular park will continue with a hospital built right up to its boundary. These buildings are not hermetically sealed from the land next to them. And there's no question that Jardin de la Mer would not remain in its present state if the hospital was built right up to its edge. Other members have spoken about the fact that there is no room on the waterfront for the hospital to grow. The constable also referred to the sinking of the road and said that it would be quite easy to access the car parks because the road is going to be sunk. Well, we don't know that the road is going to be sunk. But my personal view is that we don't need to sink it to make the Esplanade Quarter work and to make it connected to the rest of the waterfront. We have a master plan review about to start on the waterfront and the Esplanade Quarter in particular. So let's not assume that the road is going to be sunk. Let's assume rather that the present volumes of traffic along the front, separating the Jardin and the waterfront site from the rest of town, will be maintained, and they'll probably get worse before traffic reduction measures are finally put through by this government and accepted by the public. So there is going to be a significant problem for access. And I would say, why not keep the site that we currently access as a general hospital? We all know how to get there. There are issues with Gloucester Street, but they can be overcome. Let's stick to the site that we know where the traffic works, and let's not waste more time and more money in pursuing this idea for the waterfront. The views of the new hospital, I must agree with the constable that actually if you built the hospital on the waterfront, perhaps if you took away some of the other buildings and gave the whole of the waterfront to the hospital, you could have a very nice waterfront hospital. But the cynic in me questions whether those wonderful views of St Albans Bay would indeed be enjoyed by the patients. I'm not sure they would. I think they'd be enjoyed by the private clients of the hospital and the executives, but that's perhaps a cynical view. I would simply say, sir, we have no serious arguments in favour of further delay. The public are fed up with the fact that this exercise has already cost more than it should have done, and it's taken longer than it should have done. Let's accept the views of scrutiny and the Council of Ministers and reject the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Martin.
Thank you, sir. I would like to say it's a pleasure to follow my constable, but actually not today. He is the constable of St Helier, and he's had a go at the constable of St John's for bringing this amendment. I absolutely commend the constable of St John's to give us this debate. I was on the Ministerial Oversight Group with Deputy Noel, the Deputy of Trinity, many others. And I saw this plan, it must have been 5 or 6 years ago, this great big block over Patriotic Street. And the staff, the clinicians, who you're all worried about, and the management said, no, this will be too disrupted for the patients and the staff over the next 10 years. So fast forward, 6 years on, we're on the hurry up to spend nearly £1 billion by this council and minister again. And it's not. It will be nearly £1 billion. I've had it explained to me. And we can't have any more delays. Why are we on the hurry up again from this council of ministers? It's got to be done. People are fed up. No, people are fed up. You've got one chance to get this massive project right. And who said the waterfront was the right? It's been the right decision. And anybody who listened, and I re-listened and saw it this morning, the Deputy of St One's speech yesterday, clearly said he was going to be a little bit negative. He actually went on to say he and his panel were very miffed, basically. They thought the decision on a waterfront site should have been brought to this house. It's been up there at the top since 2012. But the Council of Ministers in 2013, as the Deputy said, scrutiny said, went out and done an economic impact study on the waterfront and a hospital. I've not actually seen that report, but there's something in between the lines yesterday saying, we don't know, excuse me, sir, we don't know what impact a hospital will have on Jersey's financial centre. We don't know. Well, think of any hospitals you've been to in the city. I'll just stick with, sir, the City of London. You've got the big finance there, you've got the massive headquarters of this bank there, and then you've got the London hospitals, all dotted around. Have they ever had an effect on the finance industry? But no, you put that out there, you put that in here, sir, and people start getting a little wobbly. Might have an impact on the finance centre. No. The waterfront was, in different disguises, the best site when I was there. We talked about, now how bad is this, sir? Getting rid of KFC, Pizza Hut and Cineworld and moving it that way. I mean, you eat too much Pizza Hut, KFC and go to the pit, you're in the hospital most of the time. So it's absolutely mad. That's what there was. There wasn't that much resistance. But then, and the Deputy of St One said it yesterday, the opportunity cost lost for the rich to live on the waterfront or to have more financial offices on the waterfront. We were promised a speech from the Housing Minister about social housing on the waterfront. They were given 40 when it was Senator Corrie Stein, and they said, don't come back for any more. You will not get social housing on this very, very, very expensive land. So don't even come back. They're talking about rich flats for the rich. That's what they're talking about. So don't be miffed off about, oh, we have a housing crisis, but heard it on the radio earlier, but the minister did not stand up and mislead this House and say, don't put it there because I'm going to put social housing there. I do applaud her for that. And then we got the Minister, Department of Infrastructure. And he was with me on this site, on this group. He knows this isn't the preferred site. We had the dual site before I left was a preferred site. We were trotting that round every parish hall. People's Park, it was absolutely the best site, because obviously the people of St Helier didn't want it, and most of the island didn't want it. This isn't the preferred site. This is the site of last resort at the moment for this minister. And I am not going to support him. If we don't get this amendment, I'm not voting. I'm sorry about delay. And the absolute. The Minister for Infrastructure is worried about the tenants around the area. I've been written to by tenants around the area, not even been consulted by the Minister or anybody around there up to date. They won't be. They don't mind another 6 months delay, but the best one, sir, we might be putting off contractors who want £400 million of work over the next 10 years. I can see them getting their white vans and on the boat, so they take up the whole of the Condor if it's going that day. They'd be over here. Absolute red herrings. If we put the decision off today, we won't get a contractor who wants 10 years guaranteed work at probably nearer £500 million time we get there, because there's a massive contingency and loads of costings not in there. The costings for the new Patriotic Street floors are not done. And this miracle of Patriotic Street, has anyone ever tried lately to park? I was at outpatients the other week. I had to go right to the top. Well, I'd be lucky if I actually wanted to go to the top of but I wanted to be on the ground floor. So I've got to go up and go down. But the absolute one for the Department of Infrastructure ministers to say, it's all about transport. He would need to put, sir, another 500 space car park. And that's the best we've got for the future innovation of our transport. And I'm talking to the Council of St Helier here, who is absolutely looking for a transport strategy for St Helier. Nobody thought, where's the bus station, sir? Is it a hopper ride away? Could you have buses over there? That's what you do in the UK. No parking. Oh, do you know how much parking it is in the London hospital? £5 a half an hour. £5 a half an hour. So they have the hopper buses. You park out. The bus station is yes, it's the wrong side of the 6 lanes, but it is there. It's something that we thought about when I was on the Minister Oversight Group, and now I absolutely get amazed as well with the minister is speaking to the man in the square. Senator Ferguson speaks to the man at the cheese counter. Deputy Noel, he knows everybody what everybody wants because, oh, sorry, he did want to go out and ask the people what they actually wanted the other day. No, you can't have it both ways. You really miffed me. The Constable of St John's should be absolutely applauded. The Deputy of St One's should have insisted that scrutiny should have brought this as an opinion, because I do wonder if they really go back and have a look. If you've got your walkie-talkie things on you or your iPads, look back at what he actually said yesterday. Because I was amazed when Senator Routier stood up after and went, "Oh, what an excellent rendition from the scrutiny chair." He absolutely agreed. We gave them thousands of papers. They read them all and they absolutely said this was the best site. Did he really listen to anything that the scrutiny chair said? Because he was negative. He all but said there's not balance. He was negative. We did not have the debate. We will not have the debate. The only debate we've got is to go and, yes, it will be a bit of delay. This picture here, I've been in this. I've been in the Radisson, sir, in this restaurant. I've been there with the Constable of St Helier and I've been with the ex-Minister for Health. Right at the top of the Radisson is a round restaurant room that looks right out over. Now, you imagine the hospital next to that, when you get rid of KFC, Pizza Hut. And there's a song that goes on, isn't there? And you have a fantastic, you all know, sitting here, looking me in the eyes, so I'm telling the truth, I've been on this panel, I've looked at this site, it was the worst site. They went out for 6 years and they came back and today it's their preferred site. We're again backed up to the wall, we're on the hurry up, can't do it, if you don't support it today, the sky's going to fall out of the world. Well, I'm saying if you do support it today, the sky will fall out of your world. Deputy Noel said, another 6 months delay. This is not going to be finished in 6 months. It's not going to be started in 6 months. I want the right site where even if I was having family over here and I weren't putting them in hospital, I was putting them in a hotel, where would I pick? One stuck in the middle of Gloucester Street or the Radisson overlooking, and these are healthy people. Don't tell me this is the caring, last resort, people are fed up, clinicians won't come here. Got nothing to do. Clinicians all around the world are doing specialisms now. We have a hospital that should be catering to the size of a community for 250 to 300,000 people. So that's why you're not getting your clinicians. It's got nothing to do with, well, you might have a little bit of old, this isn't the best, this isn't the best. Go and see where some of the hospitals they work in the UK. Centres of excellence. The buildings have been there for 150 years. Centres of excellence. So it doesn't wash with me. I have a long memory. I'm telling the truth. I was on this ministerial oversight group right at the beginning, and the very, very first thing I saw was this. So I absolutely know it's not going to be the panacea for all. The clinicians didn't want it, the management didn't want it, and it will be disrupted for the staff. So I'll leave it there, sir. I think people will see that I'm going to support the Constable. But if this falls, I am not supporting this site because I know it's the worst site. And without the answers, just because you've published it today and printed it out, the way we're going to finance this, without that being answered, that being answered, that being answered, you want me to pass the site today? Never. Never. It's absolutely reckless, sir. And this is what we're being treated to again on the hurry up from this council minister. I said it the other day. Scrutiny is always looking backwards. Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do that? And here we are again today. Can't be delayed. They're absolutely rubbish, sir. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to follow the Deputy Martin, even though if she has stolen all of the best lines. She takes the best lines and then makes them better anyway, so that's probably probably a good thing. Now, the Constable of St Helier did say that the cynic in him thought that the new hospital, were it to be built on the waterfront with all its great views, would have no healing value because, of course, that would only be reserved for the wealthy private paying patients, and no doubt all the other patients would be kept underground somewhere without any windows. I tend to think that actually it's a great site, and I know when I've been up to Overdale, it's not just the people who are bedbound, hopefully for a short period of time, it's also the family that go up there. It creates a nice ambience, and you can take the wheelchairs out, and families with the patients can go and sit in a nice area with a nice view. And that obviously helps in the general healing process. But I don't call myself a cynic, but certainly the realist in me tells me, like Deputy Martin, that if we don't build on the waterfront and we build on the current site, we'll see housing on the waterfront site. I think that goes without saying. But we won't see the much needed social housing that we need and that we could build down there, because it's too good for people in social housing, because they're too low, they don't earn enough, they're not worth enough. And the realist in me says, I know that that will be put out to luxury flats, which won't help the housing situation we've got in Jersey, which won't help young families who are aspiring to buy in this already very expensive island. And if they are able to rent, then it will certainly push the rental prices up in an already very expensive market. I think that's realism, that's not cynicism. But sticking on the point of cynicism, we know what Oscar Wilde said about cynicism. The Constable of St Helier will know that just as well as any of us in the Assembly. He said that it's those who know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. And surely that is the legacy that we've got for decades, and we see this with the current political progeny of former generations who are doing exactly the same, making exactly the same mistakes that their forebearers, their predecessors did. Because, of course, we know that the waterfront is an exemplar of town planning and getting the best out of publicly owned sites, isn't it? And because once we've got valuable sites like that, what do we decide to do? We decide to put a swimming pool down there when we've already got a swimming pool which is very well loved and very well washes its face at Fort Regent in a functioning sports centre. And we say, no, we'll put this down there because we need that to be the anchor. And we'll also introduce a clause which says we can't have any other public swimming pools within a certain radius. Elsewhere, I suggest that might be called corruption. Certainly, it's very untoward to have those kind of business practices going on. And of course, because we want to be different and promote our own Jersey culture, we'll put a KFC down there, we'll put a Cineworld, and we'll put some other generic food places and bars down there. So we know we've already got, we know that we can trust these guys because they are the money men, and they're the ones who are looking out for the best future of the island. And as I've said, of course, I don't think we want to see Jardin de la Mer go, and that's not even being suggested. But this is obviously being put forward by the same people who are quite willing to put a hospital on People's Park, even though we in the Assembly didn't have all the options before us. Now, let's be real about this. We know that there will be a hospital built. We know that when the hospital is built, it will be accepted because it will be part of the built environment. And once it's been there for 10, 20 years, people won't be able to imagine it being anywhere else, which is partly the difficulty we've got at the moment. The status quo is obviously quite powerful. But I think in all of this, we have to learn a lesson. Now, the first question is, why should it take a constable from a relatively small parish, a rural parish, to come back to the Assembly and say, well, actually, I don't believe I've got the facts that I need to give me the wherewithal to vote for this and to support it? Because I think, actually, although the Constable of St John's and myself come from different political starting points, and I think many of us in this Assembly do, quite often we arrive at the same conclusions. Not all the time, of course, but I think we're both believers in process. And you can't have due process, if the facts are not given properly. And I think this is the lesson to learn, which we never seem to learn, is that this Council of Ministers actually have just kept everything behind closed doors. So we're not given the facts, and it's only to the point when it seems too late and we're told, well, this is a fait accompli. And how often do we get told that by the man or woman at the cheese counter or wherever we might take our opinions from? The public know that more and more what gets presented to this Assembly is essentially a fait accompli. And even when it isn't, the Council of Ministers seem to be able to stand up and tell us that that is the case, even when the facts seem to speak in the other direction. Now, let's go through the chronology slightly. We know we originally had a position which was we will rebuild on the current site, and then that was many years old, and that was told actually that's not the best option. Then we're told, oh, well, let's build on People's Park all of a sudden, and that's good because it's an open site. Open site is preferred because it saves the hassle of having to rebuild on a hospital. And the last thing you want, we were told in this assembly, is to start creating a building site next to an existing hospital, because it's very costly to build and to rebuild on an existing site, not to mention the disruption it will cause to the patients and to the staff. But then, of course, they found that it would have been political harikari to build on People's Park because it was politically a non-starter from the very beginning, and they didn't have the vision to actually see that there would be riots, not just from people in town, but taking more green space away from the island when it's already at a premium. But then we find out about the waterfront, you know. We find out that there's a space at the waterfront, but we all know that actually it's far too valuable to give something to the island which is going to serve them for generations, for decades to come. Because actually the key thing is to make a quick buck to sort our finances out. And how many people have we spoken to actually right across the island, right across the political spectrum, who said, why are they building a finance centre, a block for finance on the waterfront, on the Esplanade, when there's already loads of offices in town, when actually the private sector can build their own offices themselves? Wouldn't that be a much better place for a hospital? And we just nod our heads, say, yep, absolutely, you're right. Of course it would be a better place for the hospital. But unfortunately, we're only politicians, and politicians in the island don't run the show. It's done through some system of arcane smoke and mirrors in the back rooms, and we don't have any say over that, how that works. And that's the honest answer, or a variation thereof, that we have to give to our constituents. Of course, you know, nobody in the private sector builds hospitals for themselves, so it's obviously up to the state to build hospitals, but there's no shortage of people who can do, and indeed will be, building private office blocks. So that's the starting point that we have to face when trying to explain this to our constituents. And I think that's just a true representation of what happens. Now, let's put on record that we shouldn't at any point in this process undermine the very valuable work that the staff sitting up in the gallery behind here and who are at the offices in the hospital have put into this process. I think they've been working very hard. I think in many ways they've been put in a difficult situation because there hasn't been any political leadership in this process, and we've been messed around, they've been messed around, and the public have been messed around with these different options which completely change. And we've all stood, well, many of us have stood during question time and asked the Minister to explain his particular version of doublethink, because he seems to be able to come to this assembly one week and say, actually, this is the best site, and then come a few weeks later or a few months later and say, actually, no, that's not a good site at all, and the original site, which was the worst site, is now the best site. But we've been very polite in this debate, I think, up until now. We know what the underlying problem is that process cannot be followed because we have one or two very loud individuals in the Council of Ministers who will bang their fist on the table and say, no, it's my way or no way at all. So, look, you're not building on the waterfront, ministers, even though it is the best option, the best clinical option. It's the cheapest option, and it can be done a lot quicker than the current site that is now the preferred site. Eurasia has always been at war with East Asia, even when it isn't the case. This is now the preferred site. It's always been the preferred site in this doublethink type of world. I'm sorry that that doesn't wash. So I suspect at the end of this process we will get a hospital built. It will be built on the preferred site of the Council of Ministers, but it will be, again, a Pyrrhic victory, because every time we go through this process, when the public are not stupid, states members are not stupid, even though most members will keep their heads down and not actually say that the emperor has no clothes. They know what's going on, and they know where the real power lies in Jersey, and it's not accountable, and it's not in the best interests of the people of Jersey. So that argument has been put on record. We know that in the future we will have a hospital, it will function, people will go there. But I'm very concerned about the way that our developments are going in Jersey, and that actually we're not looking out for the best interests of islanders. And in fact, you know, the suggestion is that the Constable of St John's is delaying this. I don't see the Constable as a reckless man by any means, and I think that actually, simply by putting this option on the table, and if it turns out that the waterfront option is the best option, we can find that out pretty quickly. We could find that out, I'm sure he'll address this in his summing up. We should know that within the next 6 months to a year. And actually, it takes less time to build the waterfront option. So we would be saving time in the long run. And I think that certainly is something which is quite attractive to me. Let's at least put it on the table. But the process here, lessons definitely need to be learned. And we can't let one man rule the show. And, you know, especially somebody who's got the reverse Midas touch when it comes to planning and developments, especially in that particular area.
Deputy Bryans.
Thank you, sir. I listened intently yesterday to the debate, in particular the sort of architectural ideas relating to this particular hospital. And it reminded me of a quote from an American architect called Louis Sullivan, who said, "Form ever follows function." And the concept of that is that you shape and design your building, whatever it may be, around the primary function of whatever it is you're building. So in this particular case, a hospital. And I don't know about other members of this assembly, but when I go into a hospital, I want to get out of it as quickly as possible. I want to spend the least amount of time in there, but treat it as effectively as I possibly can. And so in this particular case, I think the design of the hospital is vastly important. At the behest or the request of the chief officer, I went to see a lean project in the hospital some weeks ago, employing the concept of Kaizen, a Japanese idea, Kai being change and Zen being better, so change for the better. And I saw a small film about the journey of a patient going through a hospital. And then I witnessed 10 individuals, doctors and nurses, all lining up to tell us how they had worked on this project. And I was utterly captivated. I thought it was fantastic that alongside the work that we're doing, all the hard work that we recognize them for, they'd worked on this project together and actually worked on the process of reducing the amount of time that a patient had to spend in a hospital. The concept behind it all was red and green days, red days being days when the patient wasn't treated particularly effectively, and green days where they were. And that's what we'd seen on the film. And then they had taken this project on to deal with it locally. So here we had 10 hard-working individuals with heart, passion, and creativity doing the best they can for the people of this island. And I just thought it was utterly fantastic. And the more we can learn about what they do, I think the better. I was taken with what the Constable of St. Saviour said the other day about actually contacting people to discuss the matters that we were dealing with here in the Assembly. And I have taken every opportunity, rather like Deputy Martin, to talk to doctors, nurses, clinicians, surgeons, at every opportunity I could. I was just talking to a surgeon the other day at the opening of the mosque and asking the question, what did they think about the hospital situation? And their answer was always the same. Build it here, and build it now. Deputy Bree constantly reminds us of who we represent when we sit in here, the electorate. And I, like all ministers, are acutely aware of that. We are also aware that we're chosen by the Assembly to play our roles as ministers and as leaders to take difficult decisions. We make those decisions after consulting with as many experts as we can who provide us with crucial information. Why? Because we're not experts. We heard yesterday from both the Governor and the Chief Minister about the art of listening. And like many members here, I listened hard to what is being said. So I feel positive in the act of making the right choice, making the right decision, and pressing the right button. Which brings me to my colleague on my right, Deputy of St. Juan, a lawyer, and has already been said, a diligent and meticulous panel chair. He described how his scrutiny panel had trawled through countless amounts of material, consulted with experts, commissioned a report, all of which led him to the conclusion that it was imperative that we build a hospital as quickly as possible. The thing that really captured my imagination and resonated with me was what these experts said, which was we had constructed an enviable health plan, a vision that needed a new hospital at the heart of its delivery, and this had to be constructed as soon as possible. Not only that, but one of the preferable sites was the one that experts and the health minister had recommended, namely the current site. Accessible, in the heart of the community, aligned with our vision. The plan we have agreed as an assembly is best for Jersey. So, we have consulted with our own highly qualified experts. We have consulted with independent experts. We have our own scrutiny panel to examine the detail, and the conclusion reached is the same. Build it here on the preferred site, and build it as quickly as possible. Our electorate expect it. Our health teams deserve it. The future well-being of our island depends on it. We need to create something that is positive, something that we can be really proud of, that is a 21st century solution to the problems that surround it. And I will reject this amendment.
Sir.
Excuse me, sir. May we raise the defo on the Constable of St Saviour, please?
The defo was raised.
The Constable of Trinity, please, sir.
And the defo was raised. Deputy Rondell.
Thank you, sir. I am both the Assistant Minister for Infrastructure as well as a St Helier Parish Deputy, so I do have two perspectives to consider on this issue. From a parish perspective, I am pleased that the Council of Ministers were prepared to listen to the people, eventually. As you know, I was against the People's Park site, as were others. This site was withdrawn. I've also heard a lot of public opposition about the waterfront site. Would we have another campaign to withdraw it as an option? I don't know. What I do know, or at least what I firmly believe, is the preferred site is generally supported by the public and does have my support too. It was not my own original preferred site, that was Overdale. But we will all have our own preferred site, and they will always differ. I believe we have now moved on. Trying to redirect public support is a time-consuming process. Although it seems that the building time of a hospital on the waterfront would be quicker than building on the preferred site, it is clear there would be a prolonged period of public engagement, not to mention the issues over political alignment. Sir, I have seen at first hand the need for a new hospital. I want to expedite it, not delay it. The costs of delay are not just monetary. They are delays in improving the patient care, something which is very close to my heart. Sir, I'm not trying to shroud wave by any means here. But surely it is incumbent upon us to deliver improvements for the Jersey public as soon as possible. Not just the public, but the staff, from the porters to the clinicians. We know other sites have been considered, and it is a shame there wasn't one site that stood out head and shoulders above the rest. One site that everybody could support. But we are small islands, with limited space. It's always going to come down to a judgment call. Deputy Martin was referring in her speech to a refurb of the existing building, not, I believe, the preferred site option.
No, sir, I was not. Don't put words in my mouth. I saw this site. It wasn't the refurb, it was the big building at the back.
But that's what I'd understood. I also, I did hear you talk about the deputy through the chair, she had visited on several occasions the Kentucky Fried Chicken and the Pizza Hut, or as she was trying to say, Kentucky Fried Chicken and the Pizza Hut, boom, boom. That's how the song should go. And perhaps because of that, she possibly could visit the hospital, but perhaps she could also visit the swimming pool or the gym as well. So we have provided a lot of information in order to make a decision. There has been a process in whittling down the options which we have had the opportunity to influence. A preferred site has been decided upon. It seems to me to be a backward step to open up the debate again. There comes a point where we, as a responsible assembly, need to make a decision and get on with it. Yes, we want to make sure that state's money is being well spent, and we will judge that when we see the business case. But please, let's take a step forward today, not a step backwards. I am also looking at it from the point of view of those homes and businesses around Kensington Place and the surrounding area who will be affected by the new site. Their lives and livelihoods are going to be disrupted. They may well be listening or indeed watching us today. They are trying to plan their futures. Some may be seeing it as an opportunity, and some may be concerned about what the future holds for them. Whichever way they look at it, it will involve huge change. Anyone who knows a little about change and the effect it has on people will know that indecision and lack of clarity will have a detrimental effect on those concerned. So I attended the drop-in sessions organised for neighbours at the hospital in September, October. Most of the neighbours in the surrounding area had leaflet drops. It was in the press. So they all had an opportunity, and a lot of them did take up this opportunity to come and speak to the team. And whilst some appreciated that they would be more disturbed by others than the announcement, none have argued against the need for a new hospital, and they understood why the current site is the preferred site. Again, like most islanders, I know firsthand about the patient experience. That term is used to encapsulate everything from arriving to leaving that directly or indirectly affects the patient. This is something that I know the team are keeping at the forefront of planning and developing the future hospital. What I see as a huge benefit for the preferred site is for all those people who come by car. The benefits that can be achieved through the linkage to Patriotic Street car park are quite superb. At the moment, it feels that you are always walking around the hospital to get into it, especially when Gwyneth Hewlin wing access is closed. A huge benefit for patients and a huge benefit for visitors. Going to the hospital as a patient or visitor can be stressful enough. We need to be making it easier. That is what this great idea of linkage to the car park will do. I know not everyone will be coming by car, and as a supporter of sustainable transport, I don't necessarily want them to. So I am pleased to hear there is also a lot of potential for improved bus, cycle and walking access. I believe we have a great opportunity here of providing a really, really good hospital, somewhere where we can be proud of. So let's do it, please. Let's just do it. Please vote against this amendment and for the proposition. Thank you, sir.
Deputy McClinton.
Thank you, sir. And I must say how wonderful it is to have an opportunity to follow the Deputy in his amazing speech in here. And it's just great to have him in here and able to speak like that. Thanks a great deal to the wonderful staff as well who helped him recover, wonderful health staff who must be listened to. Confession time. There was a time when I thought the best place for a hospital would be the waterfront. And then shock, horror, probe, I availed myself of some facts. I sat in an innumerate amount of meetings with experts clinicians, with people who work within the hospital, and I have facts at my fingertips. Facts should help inform this. So I think we should maybe have some. Sorry, it's a big sigh and it's well meant. The preferred option first has been subjected to searching review by the Scrutiny Future Hospital Subpanel in private and public hearings. The preferred option has been developed with and reflects insights from states members. One of the best things we ever did was get everybody in the room and ask them their opinion. I think it should always be like that. I think we'd be much better functioning as a system if we engaged people more often and took them on the journey. That's where we failed in the first place. That's why we're in the pickle we're in. We don't want to carry on being in a pickle. So thank you to everybody who took part, all the states members. More about that later. Yes, the preferred option has been extensively reported in social and other more traditional media. It has been shared with and developed through over 80 meetings with health and social services department staff and discussed extensively with the clinical staff. It has been shared with and discussed with islanders in a variety of different forums ranging from parish hall meetings, coffee mornings, workplace receptions, in the hospital entrances and the outpatient departments. The project team has even been out canvassing islands' opinions in the street. In other words, lots and lots and lots and lots of time has been spent considering what people really think and feel about the preferred option. I'm not entirely clear what or who has helped the Constable of St John to develop and scrutinise the site option in his amendment presented for our consideration. Some states members may have contributed. The media, it has been reported, but less so than other options. The aforementioned Health and Social Services Department staff, well, there may have been some chats with them, may have. The news of this has entirely passed me by. He said in his opening statement yesterday, and I quote, "I think the hospital would be better in the waterfront than preferred site." Note I in that statement. What we have in this assembly and what you hear from the real people who matter, the people outside of here, all the time is this place is filled with amateur experts derailing important things perpetually. When I wasn't in this assembly, I was out there, amateur experts. It's ridiculous, it's sickening, and we're going through it again today. We pay a great deal of money to real experts for their advice, and then we ignore it again and again and again. And then we get criticised for ignoring it, and then we bring it forward and we ignore it again. What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. Ego is what's going on. Get over yourselves, some people. Ugh. I was born for this. The preferred option we will be debating later is a completely different in this respect because it has been studied. We've asked the questions, we've gone to the experts. I make these points because, as we have learned over the years, and especially in response to some events earlier in this year, there is much more to developing a viable site option for the new hospital than looking at a map and going, there. You'd think we got a bow and arrow and went, twang, that'll do. Oh no, we've looked at this at depth. We seriously considered bringing in all the paperwork, bunging it on the table there so you could see how much work's gone into it. But frankly, somebody give themselves a hernia just carrying it in. This is what we've got to balance the amount of paperwork. That, just picture it. The amount of work that's gone into this. Oh, I don't know. We'll build it there. This site has to be subjected to the intensive review of ministers and other states members, scrutiny, the media, hospital clinicians and non-clinical staff, and last but certainly not least, the general public. Islanders who will use the hospital in the years to come. It was nice that Deputy Martin gave us a potted history of the States Assembly, but we're talking about now. You cannot keep putting off decisions because of things that happened in the past, because you're just running round in circles. And you know, the absolute truth is, if you want to avoid walking in potholes, don't walk backwards looking to the potholes you fell into before. Turn around and go in the direction you're actually going in. Forward. Learn from the past, move forward. Don't keep on going back to the past and saying, we got it wrong, we got it wrong, we got it wrong, we're going to get it wrong again. You're getting it wrong because you keep looking backwards. Now is the only moment you are alive. Move forward. Learn the lessons of history. Don't keep regurgitating them again and again for your pathetic ego.
Deputy, I have to
Beg your
pick you
pardon,
up
sir.
through the chair, otherwise you are insulting me, actually.
Sorry, sir. Members' pathetic ego. Some members. Okay. This hospital, the one we proposed, the preferred site, can be accessed with ease. A hospital that will not only be fit for use on the day it opens, but will be future-proofed with room for expansion if necessary. Now, here's the thing. I'd love to draw your attention to the map marked Deputy Knoll. There it is. The size and shape it is right now. But if you flip over and you drop it onto the waterfront site, it doesn't fit. You know, you could talk about housing on there all you like, but actually you build a hospital on it, it doesn't fit. Have you ever tried putting a tent back into the bag it came in? It used to fit, it doesn't fit anymore. This hasn't even got the decency to fit in the first place. Yes, you'd have to build it really tall, but if you build it really tall, the views the constable says you'll get, you won't, because of massing. It'll be too chunky, so you won't get the views. The arguments can be shot down one after the other, because these are not the arguments of an expert, these are the arguments of an amateur expert. Plain and simple, as is evidenced. Evidence. The site proposed in this amendment and the type of hospital that could be built on this site has undergone no such scrutiny. Why? Because we know it doesn't work. States members are therefore faced with considering an untried and untested opinion developed in isolation from contributions of key stakeholders in what probably was the few days before the Constable's membership of the Future Hospital Scrutiny Subpanel ended. It's about relevance, needing to be relevant. States members are asked, and please forgive my unparliamentary language, it's not that bad though.
I probably won't, so do consider it.
Well,
before you
I
say
think
it.
this might just be on the edge, sir. Just might be. They're being asked to take a punt on an option. It's on the edge. Being asked to take a punt on an option that the Constable of St John at the 11th hour thinks might be worth a bit of a look at. Or we looked. Incidentally, the option really isn't option D, the like for like. It isn't option D. I'm sure the Constable didn't mean to mislead the Assembly, but it isn't option D. It isn't like for like. This is D minus. And this island deserves far more than D minus. What we want is the preferred site. While the Constable will get a very good idea of what States members think, as he is, about the D minus option, the Constable has no idea what the stakeholders, the wonderful hospital staff, the wider public, and the patients, and potential patients, and others think. Why? Because he hasn't asked them. You as an Assembly represent the people of the island of Jersey, and you as an Assembly need to think. We're always told to think very, very seriously. I hope we are thinking very, very seriously about any further delay and its increased cost. And the Constable of St. John claims to be very much a man of figures. We'll try these on for size. Between £1 and £2 million per month we delay this. Per month. Makes chartering a private jet seem like peanuts, doesn't it? I know. Oh yeah, interesting. That was it. That is brilliant. Yeah. The ego of this place sometimes. We want a choice. We want a choice. The last time we gave everybody a choice, the minister was told that he should he should be courageous and actually commit to something. And he tries to commit to something, you say, we want choice. What is going on? White is black, black is white. There's the uncertainty as well. The uncertainty that it will have potential to damage the possibility of the island ever having a modern general hospital to meet the health service challenges facing future generations when you're long dead and gone. You, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will be using this facility. Now, we will have to go up and develop a D- scheme, should the amendment go through. This will have to have the same level of development as a preferred site, i.e. from July to November we've spent so far on the preferred site. Assuming we can use option D information, for some of this, we might be able to do it in 3 to 4 months, but we will have to repeat 80-plus meetings that we've had with the clinical staff. We'll have to go through the whole lot again. Oh, we will. We will, because you've got to go back to people and ask them what they think. You have to. That's what you're saying in here. You have to go and ask. You have to go to the people. So you've got to go back and say, right, what do you think? Then the amendment assumes we can twin track and present outcomes without delay. We cannot imagine that following completion of the 2 parallel studies that we would then recommend the sites without significant stakeholder engagement. Again, therefore we can stick some more months on that. Remember, £1 to £2 million a month delaying this. Oh, the parking. Yeah, the old parking. Option D, is the original D, is an allowance for 140 spaces, not the 560 needed. That would cost about 20 million more in capex. There's also the 6 million for replacing the temporary parking as well. Numbers are racking up. 6 months of noise, construction site, by the way. Yeah, the 6 months of noise that was mentioned. Thanks, sir. It's good to see Senator Ferguson back again, away from the cheese counter. It's worth mentioning now when they build places, not her neighbours' properties, but places like hospitals, they take a lot of time and trouble over noise, cutting down as much as is physically possible. And it's worth pointing out that the construction site is the furthest distance from the patient wards possible, as it just so goes. So they won't hear it, be the other side. Yep, noise mitigation measures in modern construction techniques are used to minimize impacts on patients and will be. I would suggest the delay associated with the Constable's Amendment is more of a risk to patients, far more. Looking at Outlook 1 of 3 on the heavily researched paper that the Constable gave us. It's actually, you see, the obstructive view here in the foreground is actually being knocked down. Yeah, it's being knocked down and be rebuilt. And I've got to say, that's a pretty good view there. It's not bad. Better view than the massing would get on the waterfront, because you'll be able to spread the wards out more. That'll be a better view for most. There'll be no views over plant rooms, as they will be inside the building. Views over flat rooms will form only one part of the vista. Natural light into rooms will be maximised, and the rooms at high, because they're high up, will minimize the noise from street level as well. we're not just guessing here. Lots of work's been done on this. It's not just guesswork. Views from inpatients in the preferred site will be exceptional, even with 2 extra floors on Patriotic Street. We've worked it out because modelling has been done by experts. The Constable has estimated 38 million reduction in cost of the waterfront, but he has no basis for this cost reduction, and it's not recognised at all as being reasonable by people who do this for a living. It's also, well, it has been mentioned already about the Waterfront Master Plan. It's now under review. There will be delays in association with that, we don't doubt it. Now, the Constable of St John may have conjectures about support or otherwise. When I say may, I actually say will have conjectures, as the whole amendment is built entirely around conjecture rather than actual evidence. So I'll give you some evidence. We worked closely with state members, listening to their insights on how to move beyond what earlier in this year seemed an increasingly intractable problem. To give you a sense of the size of state members' contributions, in the 6 events since March this year, workshops repeated to allow the widest attendance on briefings possible, all but 2 non-ministerial states members have attended these events. And we honestly and deeply thank you for your time, your trouble, and your input. We'd hoped it would be enough not to have to go through this. We organised meetings in parish halls. These were attended appallingly. In fact, we had lots of time to chat about it, didn't we? We were chatting around, and if somebody did walk through the door, we went, ooh, ooh, we're all over them. Oh, talk to me, talk to me. Experts everywhere. But people did turn up, and what we discovered in our chats in the parish halls was, we're probably doing this wrong. So we had a good chat. Constable of Grooville, I think it was, mentioned it in passing about how good it would be to go out and engage where people are, to go to the people. We thought, obvious. We're always willing to listen, always willing to learn. So the constables kindly set out for us the kind of events that would have the potential to be a good opportunity to meet parishioners in larger numbers in more familiar ways. So off we went to coffee mornings, parishioners' lunches, car boot sales, sports centres, Christmas markets, so on and so forth. When we went to the events, we were warmly welcomed because we were engaging with people and asking their opinions. We built on this go-to approach and talked with patients while they waited for their outpatient appointments, because otherwise they were sitting there looking at posters on the wall, so we talked to them about what they thought. We went to the hospital staff in their place of work, to the public in the street as they went about their daily business, and whatever ways we could think about. We monitored social media for the sentiment about the preferred and other sites. And what did this tell us? In broad terms, well, it told us a broad degree of support for the preferred site. Interestingly, it told us more social media posts expressed a sentiment about St Saviour's, the old hospital site, than the waterfront. Told us that. As we mentioned, a broad degree of support for the preferred site and a get on with it attitude. This amendment is a not get on with it amendment. We have had no such positive messages about the option in the amendment. Now, I've no doubt the option will find sympathy among some stakeholders. Don't doubt it. Understandably, support for sites other than the preferred site will endure. We have heard in our engagement continuing regard for the waterfront, Overdale, even though that's up a hill, you couldn't get ambulances up on an icy day. The dual site, ditto. Warwick Farm, big stonking building up there, that would look great, and it's up a hill, but people still like what they like. St Saviour's, yeah, as I mentioned. And yes, there are still people who'd like us to build it on People's Park. There's still people out there. While I understand and respect the rights of islanders to express these enduring affections, they do little to contribute to us making a decision today. When we asked people a direct question, are you in support of the preferred site? We saw that about 70% of the people we asked were in favour, about 15% not in favour, with the balance being neutral or unknown. Should talk about the JEP poll. I used to do these in radio. So you said, have you an opinion on A or B? And if you got 10 people respond, 7 were pro and 3 were against, you could suddenly say 70% of people, and you do that, you wouldn't tell how many people had responded. We've been to hundreds of people and asked them. You cannot base this on a poll in the JEP. You cannot. This is far more important. This is life-changing. This will echo through history. This isn't you flexing your muscles in here.
Again, Deputy, I'm not doing this.
Members, sorry, the word you's coming out so much. If only we could stop some members using the word I. So, we acknowledge that not everybody supports a preferred option, either in the Assembly or in the wider public. The debate would be much poorer if such unanimity did exist. But we do know in the months since the announcement in June, we have not seen, this is what we have not seen, we have not seen a campaign group with the objective to remove the preferred site from consideration by states members. We have not seen petitions against the preferred site. We have not seen petitions in favour of an alternative site. We have not heard of public meetings organised in opposition to the preferred site, and we know what one of those looks like. In fact, I still have in my mind a picture, which I've kind of made up, of the health minister in a suit of armour waddling to the front in the town hall. Because that's what he maybe should have been wearing that day. It was quite something. It was quite something. Hecklers were heckling hecklers. You've never seen anything like it. We have not seen websites dedicated solely to the opposition to the preferred option. We have not seen sizable correspondence with health, infrastructure, or other ministers either for or against the preferred site. We've not heard of similar sizable correspondence forwarded by states members to ministers. We have not heard of significant numbers of inquiries made of the project team, either directly or through the Future Hospital website. We haven't heard anybody kicking up about this. Get on with it, is what we have heard. Now, much as I enjoy standing up here, I wish I didn't have to do this right now. When emotion and reason are in opposition, like People's Park, reason, it's actually a good place to build a hospital. Logically, but emotion, you're never going to have that. When emotion and reason collide, emotion always wins. I guarantee you the emotion that you'll feel if you vote for this amendment, it's going to be huge out there. They're going to start talking about the amount of delay in this. We cannot afford it. Let's not treat this delay lightly. This delay has huge ramifications. We cannot delay any further. If we want to raise any emotions at all about looking to the future, we must ensure we leave a legacy of a fine hospital for generations to come. The site, the proposed site, the one that preferred site, it has its strengths and it has its weaknesses. It has its risks and it has its benefits, like all other ones. It's not the perfect site, no. It's the best site we've got now. This site, the preferred site, has been subjected to searching and rigorous scrutiny and independent insurance. A site we have shared with key stakeholders who have given their time and expertise more generously than we could ever have hoped for in scores and scores of meetings and many, many events that have helped us shape and test its benefits and manage its risks. In other words, a site which is nothing like that described in the Constable's Amendment. If you support the Constable's Amendment today, we will have to repeat and duplicate all of the work we have done in developing the preferred site. We have to test it with stakeholders and then assure this work. And I truly believe with all that done, we will end up exactly where we are today back at the preferred site, but millions out of pocket. And we'll pass, or we'll start debating the preferred site. We'll end up back where we are, chasing our tail again. We may not even be this assembly. And that, imagine that, we'll have to kick it all around again. Do we really want to go there? Concerto partners, the scrutiny subpanel independent advisors, concluded continued delay will also result in increasing cost and collateral damage that could be far-reaching, disenfranchising the clinicians and other key stakeholders, the people you're here to represent. I urge you to vote against the Constable's amendment for this and so many reasons you've heard today.
Sir,
Sense of fun.
may I raise a differ on Senator Ferguson? But while saying that, say that she did email me this morning, but I didn't get the email till after registration that she had a medical appointment, which is why she was late. So just for the record, thank you.
That's now on the records. Deputy Massel.
Thank you, sir. Yes, and like many members, when this first came along, my thinking was very much, had it been me, it would have been great to have put police, fire, hospital, all on one site down the waterfront. But of course that was not to be. However, there are some things which I will highlight as still an ongoing concern for me. We know with the preferred option site, we've still got the issue of compulsory purchase knocking around with potential appeals. So I think we've actually got to treat the figures that the council ministers that have provided us with still a little bit of caution here as to how secure we can actually be with them. After that, of course, there's still the planning process, any appeals that will go on with the planning process. So again, the issue, which is the concern from the council ministers, we want to go with this particular site option because if we went with the other one, it would cause an inordinate amount of delay and that would ramp up the costs. Well, actually, let's not think of going with this preferred site. There aren't huge issues with the actual delay process going forward anyway. So let's just keep that in mind. Deputy McClinton talked about kind of we need to listen to experts, and if you followed that logical conclusion, it kind of seemed like he was proposing that we move to a technocracy and move away from a democracy. We are lay people in here. And to be fair, you know, when propositions have come, of course, you know, when Deputy McClinton said, you know, we must listen to the experts, a lot of states members said, yes, you know, talking along, yes, that's absolutely right. To which I thought to myself, Clothier, Carswell. Now, to be fair, with Deputy McClinton as an individual, of course, he has actually supported them as they've come along. So I don't mean for that to be seen as criticism of him. I'm just highlighting that for other members. I do think, however, we are making the decision today, because even though we know the promise of the plans that will come back, sitting through the police station debate, we know that many of the same arguments will come back. So once this decision debate is, we're bobbing along the quorum, I best be quick. Thank you. What was I saying? Yeah, with the police station debate, we know that the issues that will come back will be you can't possibly chuck this out. This much money has been spent with it. We finally got something. We've done all the same arguments that we've had today will happen in that debate, and therefore actually the States Assembly won't be able to chuck it out. Let's be honest with that. So we are making kind of the decision today. We have heard that the proposed site, what the Constable of St John's is asking for, any site is a compromise over perhaps kind of the best site that was People's Park. But what we've also been told is that the preferred site will work. Clinically, it works, and I think that's kind of very important. I remember going around my constituency when we had the debate originally. I did knock on almost every door in the district, and certainly the feedback that I got were either the waterfront or actually the general hospital site as is proposed now. So certainly for my constituency, that's the sound that came back.
So therefore, sir, what am I getting from my constituents now? And it's very much, we need to stop wasting a lot of money and just get on with it. We have a site that works. We have a site that can progress. It may not be the best. There may still be issues. The waterfront site might give the better kind of healing environment with the views, and therefore what is being proposed may not be the best, but it might be the one which we have to go forward with because that is the way forward. So, sir, I think on balance, after spending a lot of time over what will be one of the biggest decisions this island will make and one of its biggest capital projects going forward, I really do feel that we have a viable site going forward in what's proposed. It is not perfect, and there are huge concerns, and there will be delays. The figures that the council ministers have produced to us today must be taken with a pinch of salt because there will be more delays. It will cost more. But I'm not knocking the council ministers. They have produced the best figures with the information that they have today. And the things which I've mentioned can't be forecast, can't be foreseen entirely. So, trying to be fair. We have had the issue of, climate change and rising sea tides and all this type of thing against the waterfront site. And I kind of think to myself, yes, but if the sea is going to rise by that much in that time, as an island community, we've got a lot more to worry about than just the hospital, should that come to pass. So I think, on balance, regrettably, that I don't think I will be able to support what the Constable of St John's is asking for today, because I think we do have a site which clinically works, and given the amount of money through some very, very poor processes that originally happened from the health department, which have been worked on, I think we do have a way forward here. And as a statesman, that's why I won't be able to support the Constable of St John's today, and will be supporting what the Health Ministry brought forward, but with those concerns still hanging to be considered. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. And let's just think for a minute about why we're here in this debating this particular amendment brought by a backbencher. And in his proposal, why in particular, he was saying, I've seen the numbers, but I can't tell you because they're all confidential. And to tell you the numbers, I would have to breach that confidentiality, and I can't do that. Why then are we debating this amendment on the back of not having seen the numbers? Why? Because the Minister of Health didn't come to this chamber saying, we're at decision time, folks. Here's the set of numbers and considerations attached to building on the current site, what they keep calling the preferred site. And here's the numbers on the only viable alternative, which is the waterfront. Why? Because the ministers have made up their mind a long time ago. And the exercise we've been through is, whatever the solution is, it's not the waterfront. Why? Why should that be? Why? Because, as my colleague mentioned earlier, and Deputy Martin has said, I believe, because the Council of Ministers has set its mind against building this particular facility on the waterfront, because there is a 30 to 40 million pounds opportunity cost in building luxury accommodation there. And that's why. So the exercise has been, whatever numbers go into this, whatever opinions go into this, not the waterfront. And certainly, looking at the process, one would have to say that appears to be what's happened. So on this most important debate, we started off with the four site options: waterfront, People's Park, Overdale, and building either two site centre, but on site. And really, building on the current site was there largely as a marker, because the criteria were it should be property owned, should be land owned by the states. It should be an open site, because that reduces build time, reduces cost, and if we've got an open site, we can build as we want, so we can take into account all the clinical needs and the clinical adjacencies that are required in order to build a functioning modern hospital today. And lo and behold, what came top of that list were the waterfront and People's Park. But that left People's Park, which is not owned by the states, it's owned by the people of St Helier, hence People's Park. And they objected. So after some disturbance and action by the part of the people, on the part of the people, that was taken out. What does that leave? That leaves the waterfront, which has less build time, less cost, and can be adjusted to meet exactly clinical needs. And it's presented, and we are told, but if we adopt this amendment today, then we'll have to go back and repeat the 80-plus meetings that we've had with clinical staff to adjust this and adjust that and talk about adjacencies and what do you actually need and where should it be. We'll have to repeat those 80-plus meetings. Why? Let's look at that process. Why? Because we made up our mind, and what was the bottom, what was the worst option, we've converted somehow into the best option. We've done it with these extensive modelling, remodelling, and 80-plus consultations, talking to clinical staff, making sure we've got it right, making sure we've got one option right. Hence, I mentioned today of the waterfront, apart from all the reasons why you wouldn't take the waterfront and start from there. We've got a completely skewed version of events. Completely skewed version. Which says, here's the case for what we want to do, and we made up our mind some time ago, and we spent some considerable time actually persuading clinical staff that this will meet their need, but not the alternative, and could that be made to meet your need? So we've got the case for the preferred option and against the waterfront. Full stop. That's why we're debating this particular amendment today, and why we haven't got the full figures and we haven't got an informed decision, because the ministers decided not to bring that decision to this House. We should be debating for and against two options. We're not. And that is a singular failing of this Council of Ministers, not actually to do things in the proper manner.
Constable Peter.
Thank you, sir. I think listening to the debate, I have to share a lot of the ground with many other members that said they actually prefer to see the hospital built on the waterfront. That's where I was around about 5 years ago, because the waterfront was an empty piece of land. It had opportunity and it was potentially available. I also was at that time, along with Deputy Martin, we were pushed forward the idea of demolishing the Aqua Splash and all the buildings already along there and replacing them back up at Fort Regent, to enable us to actually have a far better hospital down there, was far more accessible, and the ability to have car parking on site. The costs when we add them up of actually re-providing those facilities elsewhere, and also the break clauses that the current operators have got, were phenomenal. And it was non-viable, and therefore to look any further at that waterfront at that particular time. So as I say, I've been on this journey for 5 years, even slightly before that, actually in 2010. I was on the forerunner of the Ministerial Oversight Group for the hospital. I was on the Ministerial Oversight Group for P82, the reformation of health services, which had the hospital need for a new hospital at the centre of the development of P82 back in 2010. So I'm well steeped into the history and every wrinkle and turn that we've gone through over the years, bringing us to where we are today. We've oscillated in that period of time over many different options. Part refurb, part rebuild, part double site. Budget constraints imposed upon us, which forced us down routes we didn't really want to go to. Worked with a tremendous amount of clinicians and expert advisors over those years. People from KPMG, Ernst & Young, Atkins, Gleeds, and listened to all their advices and challenged them at every single turn to make sure that we were getting the right sort of conclusions. And we've reached the point today where we're here making a decision based on expert advice from many different people, not just one, but many, many different people. Even the scrutiny sub-panel, scrutiny advisors, Concerto, they have some challenges in their report, but overall their report says you're going in the right direction. But the single biggest risk is delay in this project. That risk is not only to the project of the hospital itself, it's also a delay in delivering the necessary requirements of P82. P82 will fail if we don't get on and support this hospital move, because it's central to the delivery of health services going forward. And I have to say, when I saw the proposition from the conclusion, I was quite irritated that a fellow constable who, like me, has a lot of contact with the people of the island, we're very close to them, would actually, after seeing all the work we've gone through, has actually come forward with this proposition. Surely he knows what's been going on, and he's listened to many, many people in many different ways. But yet, at the same time, when I got over my initial irritation, I thought actually he's right in many respects, because he's made us challenge. And I've gone back into the department since this has been lodged, and I've challenged some of the things that we've already decided. I want to actually test how we've got to some of the decisions. What was the evidence behind them, to make sure that we were going down the right track. So in many cases, what the Constable St John has done, he's made me in particular and others review, because we knew we were coming to this debate, renew our views and prove that the evidence we were getting was correct. And with regard to the site, the previous Constable St John had his own good idea. He wanted the hospital out of St Saviour's, the St Saviour's hospital site, and he was probably still adamant about that today. And many other people have wanted it in different places. The Millbrook playing fields, why not? It's an open piece of land, quite convenient, right on the edge of a double carriageway, Victoria Avenue. Why can't we put it there? But at the end of the day, it comes down to, as Deputy Rondell so eloquently put, it's about the patient experience. We can build a hospital anywhere we like. We have the power to do that. But that doesn't mean to say it will be a viable performing hospital. It has to factor in, as I can't remember somebody on that side, factor in the intended use of it. And once you put the intended use in it, you then have to change your views about where it goes. Only the Jersey Annual Social Survey I was looking at only a couple of days ago, just reviewing it. In there, there's a graph, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but they were talking to people over 64 about their lifestyles. Do you suffer from medical conditions which severely hamper your life, either mildly or in a major way? And it was the figure, and I can't remember, so it will be corrected by somebody, I'm sure, was either 46 or 49% of those people said, yes, I do have conditions that actually affect my mobility and ability to enjoy a good life. So we have to think about those people and how they get to the hospital and how they get to their clinics. I want to give you a little personal story, so just for the moment. My little granddaughter is 14 months old tomorrow on the 2nd of December. In the teeth of... Thank you very much. In the teeth of Storm Angus, she was lucky enough to go straight to the door at A&E up in the parade in the evening with my son and daughter-in-law took her in there. And it made me reflect in looking at this proposition today and the plan that the Constable of St John's has provided, the yellow line, the walking distance. And I thought about if we actually did build this one down the waterfront, my son and daughter-in-law would probably have to park in Patriotic Street, with Storm Mangus coming straight up Patrick Street from the coast, southwesterly storm it was, or we see it on that particular time, but still coming up the roads there, and then fight their way across a 6-lane highway with their sick daughter, trying to keep her weatherproof from that. And then I also thought about those 46 or 49% of adults, elderly adults, also trying to do that same sort of journey, when they could have still gone to Patrick Street car park and walked across the bridge straight into the hospital. And for that reason alone, sir, that's why I cannot support going down to the waterfront. But it's more than that. The picture, I think, that Councillor St John provided us showed the new hospital's only 5 stories, no bigger than the Radisson. I'm afraid it's going to be a lot bigger than the Radisson. The smaller you make the footprint, then you have to make it taller. But even so, a hospital story is nigh on 2 stories of any other building. It has to be that much. And the reason for that, sir, is because you need the height in the walls, the aeration, the spaces, but above that, all the services that's required have to be provided in their space above the ceilings, which you and I see when we go into the hospital, clinics and the wards. Gone are the days when, as I'm sure everyone has been into the hospital at some time in the not too distant past and seen the array of piping and equipment on the walls. That is no longer acceptable because it's a place where bacteria can hide. And that's where your hospital-acquired infections tend to live. And they make light cleaning very, very difficult. The modern way is they come down on a pod, on a single pod, a single point that needs cleaning. All that equipment is there in a modern hospital. And that's why these floors have to be so much greater. And can you imagine, I can remember myself being very critical of Cineworld, that horrible block right on the edge of our major highway in St Helier. Well, can you imagine the scale of hospital of probably approaching the height of almost Cyril de Marcourt Tower, but much wider as a big bulk, right on the edge of our major highway? I can't. Well, I can, but I don't want to think about it. It's unacceptable, wholly unacceptable, and I believe we're wholly unacceptable to the planners as well, sir. And if I go to the Concerto report, I don't know how many people have actually read the Concerto report, but while we're on the subject of planning, they've got a very good section in here. Basically, it sets out with the island plan that we've agreed to. There it is, on page 8, 3.8. The island plan states that proposal for the development of new and additional primary and secondary healthcare facilities or for the extension and or alteration of existing healthcare premises will be provided the proposal is within the grounds of existing healthcare facilities or within the built-up area. That's what our island plan, which we've agreed to, says on that particular item. So even within the risk profile in the Concerto report, they say that planning is going to be the major risk, another one of the major risks in getting this project delivered through. And let's say we agree today that Councillor St John's proposition is correct and we should go down to the waterfront. The time taken to go through and override the decisions we've already made in the island plan will take a long time, apart from all the research we'd have to do to get there. How many of you have actually been down to the back of the hospital? The 3 entrances that come, one off the parade, one off of Kensington Place and one off of Patriotic Street, to the service yard at the back. And have you seen the amount of activity that goes on down there? The lorries that turn up carrying the large canisters of the medical gases and all the other heavy equipment. Just to give you a scale of the sort of things that we need to provide and create a yard which is not even accounted for on the plans that are being proposed to us today. Just looking at some numbers here, sir, just to give the Councillor St John some more numbers, not the money ones though, fortunately for him this time. Laundry items. We actually provide 1,658,908 items of laundry, and that was in 2014. That's required for the hospital. This includes 100,000 blankets, just over 250,000 pillowcases, and believe it or not, 1,000 mops a week. That's trying to keep the hospital clean. And on top of that, there's 1,500 to 2,000 meals a week to be delivered. And it's got to be readily available to hundreds of staff on 3 changeovers covering the 24 hours a day, and extra in cases of island emergencies. And we need to make that provision so they can all get there to do the work that we require them to do. And on top of that, it has to be readily accessible for ambulances and fire services, and I'll come back to fire services there. And also the police, when they're called in to deal, particularly on weekend nights, with aggressive people who have come into A&E, and they need to go and assist the staff in containing those people. But one of the main objections that I would have, going back to my fire service years and my views on that, is that a very tall, very consolidated building, constrained building, shoehorned into an area just because we want to put it there, doesn't give the opportunity to give lateral evacuation through the building. That means we have to take people up and down stairs because we can't use lifts, because we haven't got a safe place that we can move them from one part of a floor to another part of the floor behind fire-hardened doors to give them the safety, rather than have to take them out into the street because we have no other opportunity. That won't be a problem in the proposed site, sir, because it's got far more lateral space to be able to do those evacuations. And also from a firefighting point of view, sir, I'm sure the fire chief will make his own comments when it comes down to the time of planning. If you look at the preferred site, the fire service can access no matter what direction the wind is coming from. They can't go out to sea when the wind's coming from the southwest and there's a major fire. They'll have to fight the fire, if they can, inside the smoke plume and all the debris that's coming with them. I don't believe it'll pass the fire chief's assessment when it goes to planning, sir, for those very reasons alone, because he won't be able to mobilise to protect the numbers of people who are in there. We're talking about potentially 300 people laying in beds, ill, and many of them unable to even self-evacuate themselves, sir. There's many, many reasons why I now am fully convinced that the site that we have to build, and I do mean have to build, because we can't delay any longer. There's been delays in the UK where hospitals have been hung on, and we've seen all the negative press that's come out about hospital-acquired infections and poor standards because the hospitals are no longer fit for purpose. We delivered a 6-facet survey not that long ago, which says the hospital is no longer fit for purpose, and we are sticking plasters on it now to keep it going, to keep us through this design and build period. I won't comment on the other buildings down on there. I'm very much aware that the negative comments, they're going to be flats for rich people. Well, housing mobility is something I aspire to. The more people that come out of the lower cost housing to move into those flats creates more lower cost housing for the people to move into in the first place. And that's what upward mobility means. That's where I started out my life in. A flat to my first house, now into a bigger house. That's what they call upward mobility. And each step I made have created an opportunity for other people below me coming onto the ladder. That's what that high value housing will do. It will also deliver some extra profits coming back to the Exchequer, to the Treasurer, to the Treasury Minister looking there with a big smile on his face, hopefully. But at the end of the day, sir, I have a vision. It's quite a simple vision. The Deputy of Trinity had a similar vision. Her vision was slightly different. When we spoke about the new hospital going back then, it was probably around the 2-site option time. She had this wish to see all the cars removed from the front of the granite blocks and the gardens reinstated, and going back to the days when people used to come out and sit in the gardens with their families in front there. Well, I have a similar vision, except it's in a different place. Because now, with the amount of traffic we've got, I'd rather see that garden on the back of the granite block, contained within on 3 different sides, where patients can come out into the gardens and meet up with their families, who perhaps even join them with a sandwich and a cup of tea from the cafeteria there. That's the vision I want to see them enjoying, and families having access to their nearest and dearest in a nice health campus there, rather than being shut inside in a shoehorned building down on the waterfront. Thank you very much, sir.
Deputy Norton.
Thank you, sir. You'll be glad to know that much as I would wish to have said a lot more, it's already been said by some excellent speakers already, so I'll keep this fairly short. I think what's become clear is there is no perfect solution. And trying to find a perfect solution would take an infinite amount of time, and we don't have an infinite amount of time. I think it was Patton that said it's better to act on a good solution than it is to delay on a perfect solution, or something along those lines. We have the facts for a very good solution, a solution that's expandable, future-proofed, and also adds in a campus environment, which is very important. If we want to grow our own in terms of experts and hospital staff, you need a campus environment. You wouldn't have that with option D minus, as I think it's called. We need a campus environment. We need expandability. We need future-proofing. We need ease of access. We need parking. It is unfortunate that it is an inconvenient truth for some, I think it's termed, that there are skewed arguments on either side. The skewed argument appears to be you can put it anywhere as long as it's on the waterfront, because that throws a spanner in the works. Just as much as those can accuse others of saying, oh, you want it anywhere as long as it's not on the waterfront. The fact is, D minus doesn't fit, as far as I can see, and I'm no expert, but that's what the experts are saying. To be in an island, in an economy, where we have the strength and the wherewithal to build a new, modern, fit-for-purpose, future-proof hospital says a great deal about who we are and where we live and the success of the place that we live in. I find it disappointing that we can spend so much time pulling apart an island I'm immensely proud of, knocking it, saying how terrible it is, when in other parts of the world, they would be celebrating the fact that we have the wherewithal and the strength and the economy to be able to build a brand new 21st century hospital. Please don't tell me we're broken. Please don't tell me we're broke. Please don't tell me we don't care. We do. That's why we are grasping the big issue of health and future-proofing it. And to do that, we need a campus, we need expandability, and we need the right site. And it seems clear from those that have spoken already and from those that have examined and scrutinised that we've found the right site. Let's move on, let's build it, let's celebrate that we're building it. To reiterate what the Constable of St. Peter said of the proposer, Constable of St. John, thank you for bringing it to our attention. Thank you for making us re-examine and look closer. It's important that we all do. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you, but no thank you. We have a site. Thanks, sir.
Deputy Triscott.
Thank you, sir. Where to start? Well, first of all, I'm going to park my ego on the side here. I was elected 2 years ago, topped the poll, 1,200 people. I have this finger. I do a lot of reading, a lot of research, and I press the button the way I believe the people who elected me to do. So that's where I'm coming from on this one. I'll keep this particular part of my brief presentation short. I do feel that the waterfront is the wrong place to put the new hospital. Its accessibility is the major issue for me. It's also the fact of the future-proofing that is so important. It may be cheaper at the moment to actually build it, but later on when the population grows, we may have to expand it, and I think it's just the cost of doing it at a later time will actually be prohibitive, and you just couldn't expand there, and I think that would be a major problem. South of the underpass, I mean, I as a Jerseyman, I'm ashamed of what's happened there. It's one of the reasons I got into politics. We really deserved, as an island, a waterfront to be proud of. And I think, we've got what I call basically El Paradiso, because what is a swimming pool doing there? What is a cinema and various other things? We should, and we have the opportunity to build a waterfront that should have been internationally renowned and something as an island we could be very proud of. So we didn't. And that is a great regret. And I think anybody that had a hand in that, previous members, I think they should hang their head in shame, quite frankly. So just on the basis that, as you say, accessibility, expandability, we can do a report. And I admire you for doing what you've done. We could throw money at this, but I'd still have that issue at the end of the report. And it's just money, as far as I'm concerned, that would be wasted. I am, as the minister, the health minister knows, in favour of the site, the preferred site. We had a meeting, and he very kindly took me around the estate. And I did see that the place is basically crumbling and falling apart. We had a very good, productive couple of hours, and I thank him for that. I think there's a light bulb moment came, obviously, with the connection to Patriotic Street. And I think, that's, for me, and you, obviously, it's made such a difference. I have great reservations regarding various issues, as he knows. The funding, I think, has been, I think, resolved by the Treasury Minister, and I thank him the other day for the presentation that he gave us and the Treasurer. I think that was excellent, and I think it does offer a solution going forward, and I thank him for that. I've got a definite problem with the size of the hospital and P82. Major reservations. Now, as the Assistant Minister for Social Security, I fully appreciate now that we've got this huge ageing demographic wave approaching us. Currently, there's 14,000 of us. I say us, I'm fast approaching that at that particular age, but there's currently 14,000 people over the age of 65, and by 2035, there's going to be 28,000. Now, in terms of kneecaps and hips and various other things, we're going from, up to 56,000 kneecaps to look after. Now, I'm just very concerned about, the actual size that is being proposed. Now, I know we've got P82. That is still very underbaked. I mean, I really want to see that kind of thrashed out and really some projections and figures produced to actually tell us what we'll be spending on that initiative in time to come. But we can leave that for later on in the debate. That's fine. But so I thank, the Constable of St John, but as I say, I just cannot support him today. Thank you.
Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. Just a quick question for the Constable of St John. I believe he alluded to the fact that he had details or information on the costs, and that's a big part of the argument. And I don't believe that the future hospital team have costed his options, or I'm not sure if anyone has costed his options, but perhaps he could just give some detail on his costings and information when he sums up. So, thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. I actually came into the States with the intention of going on with the actual proposals from the housing minister. The health minister. However, I've been reading, while this debate's been going on today, the future hospital funding strategy, and it's giving me a worry. But let me go back, first of all, just to some of the comments that have been made. Deputy Rondell wants a hospital, and he wants it as quick as possible. But the truth of the matter is, a clean site would deliver a hospital a lot faster than building on the existing site. So even when we talk about, there may not be enough room, to be perfectly honest, the vast bulk of the project could be completed far faster than it would do with the existing site. And as far as the clinical staff are concerned, I've been having some hospital assessments as well recently, and I've taken the opportunity to talk to staff. They obviously would like the decision as quickly as possible. They'd like a new hospital as quickly as possible. And I'm not 100% convinced that building on the site is actually going to deliver that. Now, the future funding project is P130, and I hope if another member of the scrutiny panel can tell us, were they aware of the costs that were contained in this P130 and fully aware of the costs of the proposed site by the ministers? What the document says in part, it's estimated that the capital cost will be £466 million. More detailed work will be needed on design, planning and procurement to turn this indicative estimate into a final cost. And it says, part of the current proposal is to make use of Patriotic Street car park to access the new hospital. The development costs of the car park have not yet been worked through to sufficient detail to assess whether the 466 million will be sufficient to include these costs. A further feasibility work is to be carried out on and design decisions have to be made, and these will enable more accurate estimates. Also in the document it says the cost estimate incorporates all the main works to the main hospital, together with all the related relocation, site acquisition, and enabling works and associated fees. It says this is an indicative estimate, founded on an area-based assumption, but significant further development and design work, as well as planning and procurement, will need to take place before final costs can be approved. It also says the costs include work required to repurpose the granite block, but not any other legacy buildings for non-clinical use. And I find this one strange. The cost of acquiring property not under public ownership and part of this site proposal are included. Well, I find that rather interesting because every time we've looked at buying private property, if the owners don't want to sell at the price that they're being offered, it will end up going to the court. And it will not be this house or the officers determining the cost of that property, it will be the court. And they'll start off with what they think a market value is, and it goes on. But we have no idea what that cost will be, even though they're saying at the present time it's included in the 466 million. So let me just go back to that one phrase. The cost of acquiring the property, not under public ownership, and part of this site proposal are included, as are the costs to build temporary clinical blocks to free up space needing to be cleared to allow a single build, and the cost of relocating the corporate functions. The cost of demolishing or redeveloping the remainder of the existing site, not required for the future hospital, has not been factored into the 466 cost estimate. So just reading through this thing, I'm starting to get rather concerned. Let alone the idea of borrowing. Now, it's funny. I've been one of the people in the past who's always urged the states to borrow for various things, such as major projects of this type. However, when I start looking at the figures, I start getting a bit queasy, because we're talking about going up to 16% of GDP, which is quite a staggering amount of money for this island. And I do know that, okay, we could go through all the figures, but we haven't got the figures for what the alternative site would be. The Constable of St. John, he may have seen figures, I don't know. I haven't seen figures for what the cost of building on the hospital on the waterfront would be. And therefore, I'm, as I say, very, very queasy about this. So I think we've almost got the cart before the horse. We're debating now, in principle, going for the preferred site, but we haven't gone through all the costs. And we haven't looked at all the implications of the costs and see whether we agree with them. So I think we've got the cart before the horse. And on that basis, I'm not sure that I can support the preferred option of the ministers. Glancing through the scrutiny panel's reports, you see constantly, why was the waterfront being ruled out? Because ministers didn't want it there, is what it comes down to. And it comes down to they're looking at the return they expect to get from luxury housing. And I don't agree with the Constable of St. Peter, upward mobility and people selling their homes will take these ones. A lot of them will be coming from outside the island. We all know that the young in this island are having a major problem even getting on the property ladder. Most of them are going to end up be renting. I can't see that site being used for upward mobility or social mobility by most islanders, especially young people. I think I'm going to stop at this point. All I can say is, I came in yesterday with the intention of supporting the minister. I am now starting to have some serious doubts, and to be perfectly honest, no one likes delay and everything else, but we're talking about the biggest and most costly project we've ever had in this island. We're looking at funding it through borrowing, which there's an awful lot of implications that have to be looked at, a clean, virgin site, which is what most of the waterfront is, could be a much more cost-effective site than what's actually being proposed by the minister. So I must say I'm going to listen to the rest of the debate, but I'm not convinced that I'm going to follow through with my original thoughts of supporting the minister.
Deputy of St John.
Thank you, sir. I can't help but think to myself that if we were having the debate of the preferred site when we were supposed to have the debate on the preferred site, which would have been about 18 months ago or so, this option would actually have been it if we listened to the minister's comments, because the appraisals and the evaluations that went on during that time identified the waterfront as actually technically the most appropriate option at that time. So I stand here because I was formerly had the misfortune of sitting on the Ministerial Oversight Group. And to say it was probably one of the most unproductive and most hideous meetings I had to attend is probably an understatement, sir. We've got to this position here now, and I think actually councillor ministers and I will myself apologise to the team for the time it's taken, the arguments that have been had, and I think to a certain extent the disrespect that's happened during the course of this whole debacle over the hospital site. I find it absolutely astonishing that we're at this point and I hear ministers talking about the delay. We can't delay it any further, this, that and the other. I don't think that does their arguments any good whatsoever, because a lot of this delay has happened in that Ministerial Oversight Group. And they can stand up and say, no, it didn't, this, that, but it did. I was there, I saw it. And I was absolutely frustrated like you could not believe when it got to July last year, when we were going, oh, let's look at another option. Let's go back and look at this option. And, we have to take accountability and responsibility for being in that position and allowing that to happen. The mistake that happened was that we did not go into workshops right at the beginning of this term with all states members. That was the mistake that happened. Would we have spent that extra £5 million? Probably not. Probably would have spent some, but not the £5 million that was spent to get us to this point now. So I stand here and say, if we'd had that workshop then, would the preferred site that has been put forward be on the table? I actually think it would, sir. And the reason why I say that is because if we look at the way that it's worked up to this point, we had the ridiculous dual site option that was proposed. And I stood at election time, well, I stood at election time, nobody stood against me, but I stood at election time and I actually said, I don't want a dual site option. I do not want that option that's on the table, because refurbishment. So I have a long-term condition. I have to regularly use that hospital. The care that I get from that hospital is phenomenal, okay? And These people are working day in, day out to provide the one thing that I think some of us take for granted. You know, the best health that we can possibly want. Not all of us have the opportunity to have the best health, sir, and a lot of us have to use that hospital. And I am grateful for their patience and their determination to get on and do what they have to do. We get to the point where we've had the dual site. It was 297 million. Then you get to the next year, all of a sudden it's gone up by something like 123 million or something along them lines. We're being told it's going to cost 420 million to do a dual site option, which a lot of people thought was outrageous. Not just because of the cost, but because the way it was potentially going to work. And a lot of people have said, it's not necessarily the site, it's about the accessibility and the care and being able to get there when I need to get there. It's being able to ensure that, you know, my family, myself are, you know, it's the accessibility issue, it's the caring issue. And we get to the point where the waterfront was the right option. And I sat on that ministerial oversight group, and I, with others on that ministerial oversight group, said, let's go with the waterfront option, because that is telling us all the experts and the technical information, everything we were provided with at that time was telling us that that was the appropriate site to go for. Now, so the only reason, I think, if I can find the information, the reason why everything kept getting delayed, and it'll be of no surprise, it stated that whereas the outcome of the appraisal may be clear in technical terms, the high political risks associated with developing the waterfront site, option D, in the current climate mean that sensitivities have been undertaken on an increased programme and the potential for loss of income to the states from the loss of the Jersey International Finance Centre as a worst case, but these did not affect the ranking of the option. Did not affect the ranking of the option. So technically, from experts, it was the right option. But high political sensitivities. See, we really don't do ourselves any favours, do we? I'm not prepared to stand here and say, you know, talk about, I've got the absolute utmost respect for my constable, and I think he is doing the right thing. He's giving the option for us to all speak out on this and say what we think, what we've seen, and how it's happened. And he has absolutely every right for doing that. And don't dare anyone say otherwise. We have a lot of information here, but not everything in the clear. And it's, you know, the constable has stated that he, you know, wasn't to give the numbers out because of he was on the scrutiny panel, then he came off the scrutiny panel, and there's complications with those particular issues. Of course, we have that element of parliamentary privilege, which sometimes suggests otherwise with members. And so I get to this point of saying, I look at the waterfront site and I after all the discussions I've had, the expert information, speaking to various people, and the most finest element, I'm not saying that I don't have any concerns about the preferred site, because there are a few concerns. I'm worried about where certain things are going to go, how it's going to work in terms of care. But I'm being asked for the site area. That doesn't mean I just go, press a button, see you later, Minister, go and sort it all out. It means I press a button and I'm going to be on that minister's heels right up until the next elections, because I want to make sure that we fundamentally have the right hospital for the people of the island. And the site which is being proposed now, sir, for me, I've always said it, and I will continue to say it, the site where the hospital is now has always been probably the best option for the hospital because of all the arguments about accessibility and the, you know, just everything around there, the roads, the structure, the ability to interact, and the fact that you've got majority of your population in St Helier. However, what I did not agree with on the dual site option before the last elections was the fact that it was a refurbishment. Now what's happening here is it's the back part of the hospital that we're being asked to take down and rebuild. And we're going to attach that to a car park, which, whether people like it or not, and no matter how hard we try to stop people using their cars, they will use their cars. If they're in an emergency, they're not going to think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm going to wait half an hour for the bus to get to the hospital. You know, my wife will just have to, you know, hold that contraction in for the next half an hour before, you know, I take her down to the hospital on the bus. You know, this is the issue, sir. And I think there are concerns in terms of my concerns is the disturbance to actually the remaining side of the hospital whilst these works are going on. The waterfront option, for me, it's not about the value of the land or the potential value of the land. No, we will not get any social housing on that land. I'm sorry, but absolutely no, we won't. It's for people that can afford ridiculous amounts of money for penthouses and all those types of things. And the affordability in terms of the people in the island cannot afford those types of prices because that's going to be a prestigious area. I mean, it's overlooking Elizabeth Castle and all those areas around there. Sorry, but I just, if someone can convince me otherwise and absolutely commit to it here and now, fair enough. But I don't believe it one iota. So, sir, I've, you know, a lot of respect, and I always have, and I always will, for my constable. And I think, you know, we work extremely well together, actually, and that might surprise some people, politicians working well together, but we do. And if this had been on the table, if this had been the position back in July last year, and the preferred site that we're looking at from the Council of Ministers now had not been on the table, and we hadn't have had the workshops that we had, the opportunity to go and speak to the Future Hospital team, to engage with the Future Hospital team, to explain our fears and concerns about how, because they're never going to be relayed. No matter what happens, there's always going to be a problem, there's always going to be a risk, there's always going to be issues. If we hadn't have had all of those things, then I would be supporting this option, the waterfront option. But that's not the case. We're in a completely different time. We do delay it, and I'm not going to try and make, you know, big things out of this, but I just ask that you remember what happened last time. Although the dual site, I was completely against that. That increased, I mean, literally within a year by £123 million. You know, and cost is important. Value for money is important. But for me, the care, the hospital, the health and social services side of things is the most important thing, and I don't want to mess around with that, sir. So I will be voting against this amendment, and I will hope that when whatever the decision is, whether this amendment's approved or whether the preferred option's approved, that we all take the responsibility that we have as elected representatives to not just sit here and press the button, but to keep on at the Minister and the Department to ensure that the right hospital and the care is provided following this. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? In which case, I ask the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to follow the last speaker, because the truth of the matter is, sir, that there's no ideal site in Jersey for this hospital that we need to build. And I think actually that's one of the frustrations that members have verbalised during this debate and during previous considerations and during workshops and during their engagement with members of the public. Only last night, sir, someone said to me, well, I still don't understand why it can't be at St Saviour's. Just knock the old building down, you've got a clean site, and put on a bus every 15 minutes. And failing that, why don't you just rezone a greenfield site somewhere? Because elsewhere in England, they have hospitals outside of major towns. The truth is, there is no ideal site that somewhere does not have a drawback. Be it transport, be it access to facilities, be it height, be it taking away green space, be it removing a garden or a park in St Helier. And it is against that fact that the previous minister and the current minister have tried to work with experts to bring forward a preferred site. And therefore we are struggling with whether, on balance, the preferred site, whilst it has the risks that Deputy Masson referred to, of course it does, is still going to deliver a good hospital for our island and community into the future. And importantly, as the Deputy of St John has just said, delivering good quality care. And I was pleased to follow the Deputy of St John because I think she said that if this site had been on the table, if workshops had been held earlier, this is the site that probably would have been the preferred site earlier. And I think she's right. When we step back from all the work, all the conversations, all the consultation, all the work of the experts, people have said, why can't you just build it on the existing site? And we know why you can't do that, because the cost of refurbishment of the old buildings would be prohibitive, and the concerns about the risk of the implications to care whilst you were undertaking that work would have been such a risk that we wouldn't have wanted to put our community through it. And therefore, the next best option is this preferred site. But the Constable, again, is right to raise the issue of the waterfront site, because the independent report said that there were merits to that site, but there were also risks. There are also drawbacks, as there are to every site. And what the Constable is actually asking today is to keep the waterfront on the table and to do extra work on it. But let's just be clear about what the site is that the Constable is asking us to consider. It is not the proposal that has been previously reviewed, analysed and considered. It is a taking of the floor plan plate of the preferred site and putting it on the waterfront, in effect mirroring the height and the floor plate, thereby getting over one of the risks of the waterfront site, which was the removal of green space. And we heard the Connétable of St Helier say he would have fought for any site on the waterfront that took Jardin de la Mer, and he would have fought against it, because that was a risk that he was not prepared to live with. And he's right to do that. And that would have been consistent with his parishioners and islanders' views about People's Park. The Constable has then, however, not taken the multi-storey access ability of the preferred option and translated it down to the waterfront site. And that, to my mind, is one of the flaws of the proposal which others have referred to as D-. Because you can't have a smaller footprint without having the ability for that vehicular access on more than one level. It stops to work then as a model. And the Constable also said or referred to in his opening comments about numbers, about the proposal that he was putting forward as being cheaper for a number of reasons. I'm not sure if he referred exactly to inflation, but I know in other conversations he's been raising his concern that he has about inflation rates applications to the project or various parts of the project. And I don't want to get too technical on that, sir, because I find it interesting. I know the Constable does, but I'm not sure that any other member listening does. But the time that you start a part of the project, which could be discrete and undertaken discreetly, does mean in your project appraisal that for that you can use a different inflation rate, and that affects the ultimate costing. What it does not mean is that you can translate that inflation rate from one discrete earlier starting part of a project and simply apply it to the whole of the other project, which is why you need to, in some cases, use that different rate. But you, of course, offset that when you apply your cost of capital to the overall project. But I see I've lost you, sir, so I shall stop. But they are important factors in why the Constable thinks that the D- could be delivered, I think in his words, far cheaper. It's appealing, sir, but when I look at the numbers, I do not see that vastly reduced costs that he thinks might be available by going for D-. And don't take my word for it, sir. Don't be bamboozled by the technical or technicalities of such methodologies, as interesting as they are to some of us. Take the words of the Concerto report, which said of the assessment process, this is important, sir, which said of the assessment process that it had been carried out in a fair, consistent, and comprehensive manner. That's the assessment process. That's assessing option D with the preferred site. A fair, consistent, and comprehensive process had been undertaken when assessing the sites. And I just want to stop there and say that some other members have said that States members were not party to the numbers around that assessment process. And of course, for important reasons, detailed numbers have to be kept confidential. The Constable has seen them, as he rightly said, as sitting on the scrutiny panel. But members have all been invited to a confidential briefing to see those numbers. So there was the opportunity for members to interrogate those numbers, to talk to the experts, and to understand the implication and those technical differentials that I've just touched on there, sir. The Concerto report was clear, and ministers have been criticised for complementing scrutiny. That's the world in which we live. But that report said that the preferred site would deliver a safe, efficient, and modern hospital. We know that of the preferred site because it's what the Concerto report said. We know it also of the option D at the waterfront. But that is not what this amendment is proposing. This amendment is proposing that further work is done on a new option that changes D, changes the footprint, changes various parts of that option. And therefore we do not today know that the option that the Constable is proposing will deliver a safe, efficient and modern hospital. And in fact, when we start to undertake a high-level review of what the Constable is proposing, I think we can quite quickly come to the conclusion that it probably wouldn't. But we do know that the previous option would. And I want to then touch on the Deputy of St One's speech, which, absolutely right, wasn't completely, overwhelmingly supportive of the preferred option. It was nuanced. It was balanced. It picked up on what the expert report had provided to the scrutiny panel and said that the state had not had an option to consider the waterfront option D in the way that we are doing the preferred option today. And that's absolutely right. But by accepting the amendment, nor will it have. It will have the option of doing further work on something which we do not know whether it will deliver a safe, efficient and modern hospital. But let's come back to the critical point. There is no ideal site. There are risks and there are to some extent compromises on whichever site we choose. And whatever our decision today, some members of the public will this evening no doubt say to us, but have you thought about field such and such in my parish? I can guarantee it. And we, sir, must point the public back to the massive amount of work that was undertaken. Sometimes I agree with the Deputy of St John, far too slowly. But we've had arguments about sites. We've had arguments about the downsides. We've had meetings which I think the Deputy was trying to describe as frustrating. Indeed they were. Indeed they were. But that's the process of government. That's the process of decision making. When there isn't an easy, off-the-shelf answer. But on balance, the preferred site, having looked at tens of sites across the island, including St Saviour's Hospital, including greenfield sites, including some of the other sites that other members have mentioned, some more controversial than others. What the Minister is now proposing as the preferred site, for all the reasons that the experts tell us, and for all the reasons that members gave in the workshops, it is the right site for us to deliver a hospital that will be safe, that will deliver an efficient health service and will be modern and fit for the future. Of that we can be certain. I was going to say this morning, sir, but today, let's just say today, that if we make a decision to move forward with this site today, we can be certain that an assessment process which has been reviewed by experts says that the sites have been reviewed on a fair, consistent and comprehensive basis, and the preferred hospital will deliver a safe, efficient and modern hospital. We cannot say that for the amendment. And therefore, sir, I do not criticise the Connétable for bringing it forward as like his deputy. because he has created an opportunity today. But if we want to deliver for our community as soon as we can, and I am sorry, sir, that it's taken so long to get here today. But if we want to do that as soon as we can, bearing in mind that complex survey called a 6-facet survey, which basically means there are 6 rather major areas of the hospital that are going to need today quite a lot of work on them, and it's only going to get worse into the future. We want to make a positive decision to deliver a safe, efficient and modern hospital which will deliver the care that we know needs to be delivered into the future. Then I ask, sir, members to reject this amendment. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendments? If not, I'll call the Constable St John to wind up.
Thank you, sir, and I'd like to thank everyone who spoke and those who made very kind comments about me. I would also like to put it very clearly on record the help that the officers, particularly in health, over the work they have done. It has been immense, and it's been a massive project, and they have engaged as much as possible with us in this assembly. In particular, 2 officers have been truly outstanding. I'm pleased to follow the Chief Minister when he says no site is perfect. And yes, that is always the case. And I think some assistant minister somewhere keeps saying the problem with perfection is it takes too long to achieve or something. One of the main reasons I want 2 sites progressed, and I'm not saying I want the waterfront and we must decide here today on the waterfront. That's not it. What I want is an equal level of evaluation put on the waterfront to compare with what has been done on the existing preferred site. To give us the choice to compare apples with apples rather than a pineapple with a peach. What if, at the end of the period that the Health Minister is proposing to come back to this Assembly before the summer recess, what if the prices suddenly, as in the previous case on this hospital site, goes up 123 million? And instead of looking for 466, we're looking for 600. Do we continue down that avenue? Or do we say, actually, no, we can't afford that, we'll have to look at another option? That is where there will be a big delay. But by bringing both the sites together, any uncertainty that might come out of the woodwork can be mitigated. The biggest issue here is we must have a new hospital, and we must have it as soon as possible. That's not starting digging in the ground, that's the finish, opening the doors. Some member of royalty hopefully coming and cutting a ribbon. That is the point at which I wish to get to as quick as possible. And I know that there will be unexpected surprises along the way. And the Treasury Minister always talks about prudence. This amendment is prudence personified. The Senator Farnan asked about the figures and how I came to cost reductions. There have been changes in specification on the existing preferred site, and it is really merely a matter of transposing those across. And one of the most completely mysterious figures is that one suffers greater inflation in a shorter period of time than you would over a longer period of time. And actually one of the biggest pluses for the preferred hospital site is that we will suffer lower inflation on this island over an 8-year period than if we did over a 6-year period by building the waterfront. Quite how the waterfront has that effect on inflation, I don't know. The Assistant Minister of Health, one of them, said, the biggest problem of this assembly is we don't listen to the experts. Yeah. Practice what you preach. Because the site with the cheapest, lowest risk, earliest delivery from his own experts is the waterfront. I've read the report and I support the experts. Sorry, sir, I'm trying to read my own notes, but as I wrote them without my glasses on, it's rather difficult. The sub-panel, and here again I praise the professionalism, the difficulty of arguing with a lawyer, and the Deputy of St. Wan's has done a first-class job. But if scrutiny was given sufficient time, we could perhaps have looked at the financial side, which Concerto didn't do. We could have produced our report prior to the deadline for amendments. And instead of me standing here, it could very well be the chairman of the committee who would be standing having brought this amendment. Because I've had a lot of support from members of the committee in producing this amendment, and I would like to thank them. And I'm personally convinced, because I had the difficult choice, resign from the committee and produce an amendment, or wait and allow the committee, the sub-panel, to produce its report with a recommendation that perhaps waterfront site should be examined. And what would have happened to that report? Brilliant report on the shelf, dead and buried. And this debate would not have taken place. And so I say to the Chief Minister and I say to the Council of Ministers, you must allow scrutiny the time to do its job in a timely manner so that reports are produced before the lodging deadline, so that any member, including the panel itself, have the ability to bring an amendment if that is necessary. Deputy Martin, I always enjoy listening to her, said that it's been the top site since 2012. She was subsequently corrected by the Constable of St. Peter, who said it's been the top site since 2010. Well, actually, if you go back to the late 1988s, there was the Waterfront Advisory Group, an eminent and exceedingly wise group. And I know, sir, that if the bailiff were in the chair, he would agree with me, because at least 2 members of that group went on to become jurats. And their preferred site for the hospital was the waterfront. And where the cinema and the swimming pool are, we would have the police station, fire station, ambulance station, all in one place, so as to save money. Instead, we have a swimming pool which costs us money. I'll just briefly touch on the People's Park. And it was very interesting that when Concerto arrived, complete with their suitcases, because it was a very rushed occasion. They said the taxi driver brought us past People's Park, and he pointed out the window, that's where the hospital should go. And they asked us, why isn't the hospital going there? And I said, well, you wouldn't build a hospital on Hyde Park, the equivalent. And so I think that puts it into perspective. And there I criticise the Council of Ministers again, or possibly the Minister, for looking at People's Park when it was clearly a no-go to such an extent in the first place. We keep hearing that the site isn't big enough. The site is actually 60% larger than the current preferred site. The main building on the current preferred site is just under a footprint of just under 10,000 square metres. The site on the waterfront is just under 16,000 square metres. 60% bigger. I've been trying to think how to explain to members what that extra size really means. Basically, it means that instead of you getting an annual salary of £45,000 a year, you get an annual salary of £75,000 a year. Now, I dare any of you to tell me that that's not much bigger. The current hospital preferred site works because of the car park. You can drive onto the level, walk across straight into the hospital. Actually, no, you can't, because I've received a note. Patriotic car park is currently full. You will have to park either at Pier Road or Green Street, because Patriotic Street is full. It's also very interesting that Gaspé House is only half or two-thirds full, and when you put another 600-700 workers into that building, where are they going to park? So we're going to have to make Patriotic Street 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories taller. In fact, I suspect the car park would have to be taller than the hospital to fit in all the cars. And then this issue of, well, you can park your car and walk across into the hospital at multiple entries. And I've thought about this. Yes, you've driven on to level 2 in Patriotic Street car park, but you want level 4, that's full. So you take the lift in the car park, a drafty lift in the car park, and then you go the walkway into the hospital. Well, actually, I'd rather prefer to walk into the hospital, into the lobby area, into the warm, and take a lift in the warm to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th floor. It's a little more comfortable than doing a lift in a car park. I think, sir, I've just about gone through all my notes. One footnote, though, is Jardin de la Mer. It is probably one of the most underrated parks on this island. When you go there, you will see lovely granite that has been carved in a way of ships, the benches in the way of waves. It is a truly outstanding area. And I met a tourist there who was, I don't know, somebody to do with architecture. And he said, this is absolutely amazing. But why, oh, why can't you sweep the sand away and keep it clean and tidy? So perhaps that might be something that can happen in the future. The main reason I bring this amendment, sir, is to give this Assembly the choice. We haven't had the figures. The work hasn't been done on option D, minus, as the Minister likes to refer to it. trust us. We're the council of ministers. We know best, and we have no ulterior motives other than the patients and the people of the island. Well, it's not that I mistrust the council of ministers, but I'm a farmer. And I know what promises from ministers and from politicians is like. Because I, throughout my entire career in farming, listened to the promises each year with great anticipation, which come Christmas at the end of the year, resulted in spam and no turkey. And that, sir, is why I think that everyone here should be given the full story of both sites, and both sites be progressed together so that we can make an informed decision. And it is purely about this assembly making decisions, which I'm led to believe is supposedly the case, rather than just rubber stamping ready-made decisions. And I call for the appel, sir.
Sir, could we raise the deaf on Senator Ozer if you open voting, please?
Therefore, Senator Ozer is raised. The appel has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. The vote is on the amendment to P110. If all members are present, I ask the greffier to open the voting. If all members now cast their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. Announce that the amendment has been rejected. 9 votes pour, 29 contre.
Now I'm playing.
Those voting for Senator Ferguson, the Connétable of St John, Deputy Martin, Southern, Kevin Lewis, Higgins, Mezek, Bree and MacDonald.
Can we have the others as well, please?
Those voting contre, Senators Routier, Ozef, McLean, Gorst, Farnham, Green, Connétables of St Helier, St Clement, St Peter, St Lawrence, St Mary, St Wannes, St Ralloc and St Martin, Deputy of Grouville and Trinity, Deputies Knowles, St John, Masson, Pinnell, Bryan, St Peter, Rondell, Andrew Lewis, St Wan, Norton, St Mary, Truscott and McClinton.
So we now return to the main proposition. Does any member wish to speak on the main proposition? In which case I call on the Minister to conclude the debate.
So I'm sure members will be relieved to hear that I don't intend to spend a lot of time summing up, because I think we've done a lot of work today. But I would like to thank all members and my good friend, the Council of St John's, even though we don't agree, for a lively and informed debate today. So whilst we heard some red herrings, I'm very encouraged by the level of knowledge and understanding that my fellow states members have on this issue. And I agree with the Deputy of St John's. If only if we'd had those workshops earlier, we would be having this debate earlier. I can't argue with that. But I give my commitment to continue to work with states members, because we've still, if the Assembly accepts this proposition, we still have a lot of work to do. We've got to get the detailed, the outline planning permission first and start to work up the details. And I give my commitment particularly to the Deputy of St John's to work with us to ensure that we do provide that first-class patient experience. After all, that's what we all want. So we want nothing more or nothing less than something that we would like to see our family, our mums, our children, if they've ever got to go to hospital, we want nothing more or less than what is good enough for them. Then it will be good enough for everybody else. So I don't think I want to go on too long, really, but my predecessor that stood in and sat in this seat, former Senator Lamacor, always said regularly, and perhaps it's a quote I need to continue on, the downfall of a good plan is the quest for a perfect plan. I think he got it from some German philosopher. And I think that's where we are today. We've got a really good plan. We can give a legacy, leave a legacy for the island of Jersey
that will not only give them a good hospital for the future, that is future-proof in terms of expansion, because who knows the way medicine is going. We've been looking at, for example, we're not able to, but we've been looking at, for example, whether we could provide much needed radiotherapy in Jersey rather than going away. It's not possible. But who knows? Technology may change. It may be possible. Who knows? We may not even need radiotherapy. And we will have space to develop within that campus changes in medicine if it's needed. No, when it's needed. May not be in our lifetimes. It will be in other people's lifetimes. So over 3,000 islanders got involved in our focus groups and gave us their opinions. And yes, there were some that said the waterfront. There were some that said the People's Park. There were some that said St Saviour's. And actually, that was the second most popular site, strangely enough. But given that 60% of patient journeys start in St Helier and end at the hospital, in the UK, if you put a greenfield site hospital moving away from the town, you're moving closer to another community. In Jersey, if you put a hospital at St Saviour's, you're moving completely away from the community and not closer to very many people when you look at the way the island is populated. So, sir, I think I've said most of what I want to say. We're still on a journey. We've got a lot of work to do, but it would be wrong of me not to pick out a few people to thank. First of all, sir, it's been a very difficult journey for myself personally. I don't think I'll ever forget the evening in the town hall over the People's Park, but it was an eye-opener in many other ways for me. And the support I had from two ministers in particular on that evening, the Chief Minister and the Minister for DFI, sir, was outstanding. And they've continued to support me, and I'm really grateful for that support. Because, believe it or not, whilst I'm quite a stubborn person, it would have been very easy to have thrown the towel in on that day. So other minister that has supported me is, well, the Assistant Chief Minister, Senator Paul Routier, has worked consistently with the panel, the Working Party, and has provided that sound, that sensible, that ordinary advice that is so important. I'm very grateful to him. I'm really grateful, sir, to the Treasury Minister for the innovative funding system that he's come up with. And might I add at that stage to the work that Treasury have done. Nobody knows the hours that Treasury officers have put into looking at all the different options, the weekends, and I'm really grateful to them. So the Chief Officer of DFI and my own Chief Officer and the Managing Director for Health and Social Services have been absolutely fantastic in supporting me. We would not be where we are, me and the team. It's not about me. So I'd like to say thank you to them, sir. The Constable of St John, I think, very, very kindly mentioned the officers in the future hospital. And I know the two officers he was particularly thinking about, but the whole future hospital team have been amazing. You'll never know the hours they've worked, not just in reworking schemes, not just in coming back to challenges that I or the other team members of the team have made, but the hours they've worked going out and engaging and consulting with the public, at car boot sales, at coffee mornings, and these are happening at weekends and in the evenings, and they deserve a huge round of applause and support, sir. So it would be very wrong of me, though, not to thank the former Minister for Health and Social Services, who set the motion running, who set the basis, on the foundation on which the whole of the new health service is going to be based, on which a new general hospital, if accepted today, will be part of it. And again, you'll never know the hours that that minister put in, and I'm very grateful for the work that she did. So, surprisingly, I think people have been surprised. I'd really like again to thank and I say surprise, I don't find it surprising, some people do, that I'm thanking the scrutiny panel for their work. The thousands of documents that they worked on, the questions that they came back on, the work they did with their independent advisors, and the balanced and considered report led by the chairman, the deputy ones, will never know how important that was, but it was very important. I know they worked very hard, and I'm really grateful and look forward to working with them to develop the scheme further. So I thank the chairman particularly, sir. And of course, I shouldn't sit down without thanking my two assistant ministers who perhaps kept me standing upright at times, always provided that sensible, different challenge. So one brought continuity, one brought a new pair of eyes, and I think the team has been better for that, sir. And with that, sir, I ask for the appel.
The appel has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. I ask the greffier to open the voting. Four members have now cast their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce that the proposition has been adopted, 34 votes to 3.
Those voting Conch, Deputies Martin, Higgins and Bree.
Before I call on the Constable St Clement, we've had two documents presented today, Control Auditor General Code of Audit Practice and Control of Housing and Work Jersey Law 2012 Residential Employment Status Policy Guidance December 2016. Constable St Clement, for your interim public business.
Yes, future business, sir. As per the consolidated order paper, except for January the 17th, Brochure 123, Millennium Town Park, additional open space and lodged by the Constable of St Helier will be deferred probably until May, sir, while the planning application is dealt with. But with the addition of Brochure 130 of the Treasury Minister, the funding for the general for the new hospital, so that will also be on the 17th. The 12th of September, sir, is a Monday, and we shall be commencing on Monday at 2:30 to deal with questions before we go into the budget debate the following day, which I would expect, sir, would last 2 to 3 days, sir.
Very well. The States now stands adjourned until 2:30 on Monday the 12th of December.